30 minutes all the way to North Haven, Connecticut.
I've been in business for 14 years. We spend tens of millions of dollars per year in paid advertising. And in this video, I'm going to share something I've never shared before, which is that I have 12 internal hacks that we use whenever we write any piece of advertising or copy that goes out to sell stuff. And I'm going to give you all of them. All right, this is very exciting. I haven't shared this publicly ever before. And so I want to give you 12 persuasion hacks to get anyone to buy. And I'm calling it that, but fundamentally I have rules of copywriting that I have as an internal document that I check when I write every piece of copy. And so fundamentally, no one knows you exist. They don't care about you or your product. And so you have to convince them. And so I've spent tens of millions of dollars on ads just like last year alone. And these are the commandments that I check off for every single piece of advertising that we write, every piece of messaging, every video sales letter, every landing page. And this checklist is my internal checklist, and I'm just gonna give it to you. So there are 12. Let's start with number 1, which is headlines come first for a reason. And the reason I have it as the first one is that it is the first and most important. So to quote David Ogilvy, once you've written your headline, you spent 80 cents of your advertising dollar, right? And so that means that the vast majority of people will only see the headlines in whatever it is that you make. And it almost feels unfair that a headline is just a phrase or one word or one question, but it is also the thing that is ultimately going to get the most people to, or have the biggest lever on whether your advertisements do well. So think about it like this, because it's the law of small numbers, which is if you go from, let's say, a 1% click-through rate to a 3% click-through rate, you triple the amount of people who are ultimately going to see everything else that you have. And so there's very little things that happen in the rest of the entire funnel that have the ability to triple. Sometimes you get 20% lifts, 50% lifts. That'd be a monster split test. But a banger or killer headline can absolutely outperform the control by 2, 3, sometimes 5x, right? That is why it's so important. And it feels unfair because it's so short. But the thing is the best advertisers, the more they've been doing it, the more they obsess on the hook. They obsess on the headline because they know that's where the money's at, right? Like if you have a winning hook for your ad campaigns, you keep using it to death and you try and beat it. And so here's some of the things that I write down, which is curiosity is king, different is ideal, and sexy works. And never run an ad without a headline, because the thing is all ads have headlines. There's just bad ones and good ones. Because if you don't write a headline, you do have a headline. It's just not very good. And so fundamentally, the headlines serve to give us a different wrapping paper for the same offers. And you want this headline to be so powerful, and I like this visual, it grabs the reader by the throat, right? And so bonus points is, how can I know that something's going to work ahead of time? One of the best ways to test headlines and hooks is to look at your organic content or other people's organic content or other people's ads. Look at the first 3 seconds, visually and verbally. What are they saying and what's happening in the background? And those are the first places that I'm gonna look in order to model what headlines apply to me. Now, the really sexy hack around this is, can I steal like an artist from a different industry? Can I look at ads that are working well in the travel space and use them in business? Can I look at ads in the weight loss space and use them in business or whatever space you're in? And so some thoughts I have are curiosity, quotes, questions. Are there kind of emotional outcomes or experiences that I'm describing? One of my favorite headlines of all time is how to yay without boo, even if you biggest insecurity, right? I'll say that again. How to yay, good thing, without boo, bad thing, even if you biggest fear. How to speak confidently in front of strangers without ever practicing, even if you're deathly afraid of speaking in public. FYI, there are entire books written on each of these 12 pieces that I'm gonna talk about. I'm trying to give you the 80-20 because at the end of the day, when you're writing ads, you're not gonna read 12 books before you write the ad. You have a little mental checklist that you go over, and that's the checklist that I'm giving you. And so each of these bullets are kind of like the best converting nuggets that I have on each of these kind of mini topics. And so this is like my little cheat sheet. So whenever I get stuck writing a new idea or for a new image or video or copy, this is what I use to kind of remind myself. Real quick, guys, I have a special gift for you for being loyal listeners of the podcast. Layla and I spent probably an entire quarter putting together our scaling roadmap. It's breaking scaling into 10 stages and across all 8 functions of the business. So you've got marketing, you've got sales, you've got product, you've got customer success, you've got IT, you've got recruiting, you've got HR, you've got finance. And we show the problems that emerge at every level of scale and how to graduate to the next level. It's all free, and you can get it personalized to you. So it's about 30-ish pages for each of the stages. Once you answer the questions, it will tell you exactly where you're at and what you need to do to grow. It's about 14 hours of stuff, but it's narrowed down so that you only have to watch the part that's relevant to you, which is probably about 90 minutes. And so if that's at all interesting, you can go to acquisition.com/roadmap, ROAD map, roadmap. Number 2, say what only you can say. So if you've done something remarkable or different, you want to say it. Proof will always outdo promise. So the reason at the very beginning of this video, I said we spent tens of millions of dollars on ads last year between our portfolio companies. So this isn't like, we don't have an agency. That's actually us spending money in our actual companies. So it's not like me taking credit for all the clients that I have. Like, it's not that. It's like, these are the companies that I own that we spent money on to generate revenue, right? So we risk real money behind these things. Now, if you're the only triple black belt in your local area, say so. If you're the only person who's helped moms over 35 who are vegan powerlifters, say so. If you're the only person who, like, the thing is that what you want to do is you want to be one of a kind. But the beauty is that you get to control what the pond that you're one of a kind is. And so the friendly reminder here is that competitors can copy your offer, but they cannot copy your proof. That has to be earned. And so one of the big reasons, the big defenses that I believe exist for people who have done stuff, which is why you should do stuff, is that it doesn't matter how many AI avatars come out, the AI avatar can never have done something in the real world. They can lie, but they can never have done something. And so no one can take your story or your experiences away from you. And this is one of the things that excites me about the future of AI, is that story is still going to be paramount. Why should I listen to you is still going to be a question at the top of everyone's mind. And in a world where trust is going to get diminished very rapidly, where we're not going to know what's real and what isn't, verification of facts is going to be even more important. So say what only you can say. Number 3, always call out who you're looking for. And bonus points, who you're not looking for, which is actually even more powerful than the original call out. So, because it's one thing to say, hey, you know, I'm looking for business owners. But if you say, hey, if you're below $250,000 a year, you're below $500,000 a year, below $1 million a year, hey, this isn't for you, go consume my free content. It communicates very strongly where you position yourself in the marketplace. And so if you only want to help people who want to lose a lot of weight, not a little bit of weight, like, there's a big advantage. And you know what's funny? I've actually never seen anyone in weight loss do this, but just say like, hey, only for people who are trying to lose over 30 pounds. Here's the crazy part. There's enough people who are trying to lose over 30 pounds that you can say no to the people who have less than 30 pounds to lose. Here's the other great thing about people who have over 30 pounds to lose, is that you might only need a couple hundred customers in order to make your business work. And there's like a billion people, many billions, but maybe only a billion that speak your language. Doesn't matter. Point is that most people are afraid of saying no to customers, but when you say no to customers, you polarize the customers who are the right customer to move even more towards you. What you don't want to be is vanilla. If you say, I'm everything to all people, I accept all customers, then it means no one feels pulled to your marketing because they're never going to think, oh, this is for me. That is the result that we want to have happen from our advertising, that someone self-selects, they raise their hand and be like, wow, I feel like this person's talking to me. And so when you advertise, you never advertise to the masses. You advertise to one person. And so you want to be very clear when you're writing your copy, who is that one person? I want to identify the reader. I want to identify the viewer or the listener. You want them to think, how does he know my secrets? Well, you can only be that specific if you're talking about one person, right? And so as you go through this, you can go through different levels of awareness, which is like at the top level, someone can be completely unaware, so you have to hook them with curiosity. At a level underneath of that, you have to have someone who might be problem aware. Hey, do you get up at night to pee more than 2 times? Hey, have you ever had someone cancel a contract before it comes due, right? These are problem aware. Then you have solution aware, which is like, have you ever tried to collect using some of these softwares and it hasn't worked the way it was supposed to? Have you ever tried a supplement and it hasn't gotten the results that you want? That's solution aware, right? Underneath of that, you have product aware. Okay, have you ever tried this type of creatine versus this type? Have you ever tried an ad agency before that's done meta ads, right? These are very, very more aware customers. And finally, the most aware customers are people who already know about you and about your product, and then you have to make offers to those people. But at all the way through the stack, we want to talk to people as though we know who they are, because you probably do. And the crazy thing is that customers, this is the crazy part about customers, you want to lean into the fact that everyone is selfish. Everyone thinks they're the center of their own universe. And when you can say something that actually affects many, many people, but you can say it as though they think that they're alone in the universe, when you are specific, that is what creates compelling copy, specificity. And so if I say, hey, are you overweight? That's trite marketing. You don't want to use terms like marketing-ese, like marketing speak, marketing lingo, right? You've read ad copy before and been like, oh, this is ad copy. The way that you get out of that is by taking words that people use and breaking them down into chunks. And so by saying, hey, instead of saying, are you overweight? It's, do you have trouble getting upstairs or going on a walk for a long period of time without a rash forming between your legs and sweating in places you didn't know you could? When you say that, that's much more specific. And so what we want to think about is, what are the moments that someone's going to experience fatness? What are the moments someone's going to experience brokenness? What are the moments someone's going to experience frustration in their marriage or their friendship or loneliness? Like, we talk about the moments because the moments is what they remember. No one remembers the vague words. And that's not what gets them to emote or have an emotion, and then ultimately lowers the action threshold so they take the next step. And so, for example, I just had a Cash Cows episode with a gentleman who does bar consulting. So he helps bars become more profitable, like restaurant bars. And so when I looked at the copy, it looked generic. It looked like he was just using marketing lingo rather than saying, hey, when you look behind the bar, does it look like a bomb went off? Right? Does it look like this is a homeless shelter behind your bar? Right? The thing is that you probably get a laugh, but the person's probably like, yeah, my bar looks like that. It's a mess. Right? And the thing is that that's a moment when they walk in or they look behind the counter and they're like, what happened? That's the moment we want to pinpoint, because they probably had that happen the last 7 days. And if that pain is fresh, the likelihood that they then take the next action is high. So the next one is number 4. Always have a reason why. And this is big. So I like to use the fraternity party planner perspective, which is that it doesn't actually matter what reason you use, but more so that you have a reason to begin with. And so this, the first point when I started adding this in was, I think I read one of Cialdini's things ages ago, where he talked about how when people were cutting other people in line, if they had a good reason, people were more likely to let them cut in, which is basically a persuasion win. They said, hey, can I get in line in front of you? And it's like, hey, I've got this paper I've got to turn in, I need to copy it quickly. And so people said yes. But later they tested it where they just said, hey, I have to get in line because my cat is back home. It has nothing to do with getting in line or needing urgency around the copy. They just basically said, because insert random reason. But having a reason in general for most people makes it better than no reason at all. And so the word because is one of the most influential words in the English language. Use it because it works. And so if you are going to use a reason, great. Now you get bonus points for a reason if you can tie it back to urgency or scarcity in some way, which I'll talk about those two in more depth later. And so when you're giving your reasons why, what I encourage you to focus on is giving them the reason why to do the next step. And just that, right? Every line of copy sells reading the next line of copy. And then those lines of copy sell the click. And then the click sells and then the landing page that after comes from the click, the headline of that page sells the opt-in. From the opt-in, it sells showing up to the next thing. It's that we just want to be very clear about our messaging one step at a time, because someone can't take 9 steps. We want to sell one step and be very clear about what we want them to do next, right? A confused mind does not buy, and a confused mind certainly does not click. And so when I say thinking about this as a fraternity party planner is, what reasons does a fraternity party planner need in order to plan a party? Not many at all. The bar for having a reason to party is quite low. Timmy got his wisdom teeth out. Kegger. So John broke up with his girlfriend. Kegger. Let's drink. Right? And so the idea is that you don't actually have to have a reason. Birthday. It could have been your birthday last month. It could be your wife's birthday. It could be your dog's birthday. Right? It could be the anniversary of the business. There's 4 dates that you can run for a whole month. Right? It's my dog's birth month this month, and for that reason, we're running this offer. Right? It does not matter. Now, kids, which of course everybody has a favorite child. Kidding. Calm down. Anyways, is damaging admissions. All right? There is probably, in my experience, nothing more powerful than damaging admissions. Now, what's very interesting about this is they've done research on basically the persuasiveness of somebody who admits their bias up front. So if you say, hey, I make money from these videos in the following ways, people, even though they know that you admit you have a bias, they are now more likely to believe you because you said you have a bias, because you've actually been truthful. And so you want to own your flaws. And damaging admissions, in my opinion, are so powerful because they're actually just rooted in truth. So you want to always own your flaws. Of course you have them. Of course your product isn't perfect. Say so, and what you'll sacrifice and promise, you'll gain in trust. And trust trumps promise. Think about the promises that you have to give to a referral. Very little. Why? Because you are borrowing the trust of the introduction of the person. So when you get a referral, you're like, yeah, you helped my friend Sandy, so I'll buy. You don't need to promise much at all because they trust you. And so I would rather always sacrifice promise to gain trust. And so there's the famous Eminem story of he figured out when he was rapping that if he owned all of his flaws and he said, I'm short and I'm white and I'm blah, 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 right? He says all these things about them. The other person has nothing left to say. He pulls all the wind out of their sails. He pulls all the punches because he punches himself with that. And then they have nothing left. And so basically, we want to address all of the concerns they have up front in our damaging admissions. And so what happens is the linguistic power of this is that you have statement, but, other statement. And the statement that comes after the word but is the part that is the thing you want them to believe. And so you say something that is true and believable and damaging to you so that they can believe that thing that comes after but. So let me show you how this works. So if I said, hey, these markers smell like shit, but they write 4 times longer than other markers and they don't dry out. You're gonna be like, wow, I now believe that more than if I just said, these markers last 4 times longer than other markers before they dry out. If I said they smell terrible but they do that, it's more persuasive. Now watch this. Let's flip it. These markers write 4 times longer than others, but they smell like crap. What am I emphasizing? I'm actually emphasizing the fact that they smell bad, not the fact that they write longer. And so we use the first part to gain trust for the second half of the statement. Viagra only works for 4 to 6 hours, but you're gonna have the time of your life, right? And so it might raise your blood pressure, but you're gonna have an amazing night, right? Our websites are ugly as hell, but they convert, right? Our systems are incredibly boring, but they work, right? If I said our systems work, but they're incredibly boring, I'm gonna emphasize on the boring part, not on the fact that they work. And so by how you organize your language around words like but, which are amplifiers, it allows you to say damaging admissions in a way that's compelling. And so right now, what I would like you to do is write down all of the flaws, all the things that people complain about, the things that you know you could do better, and claim them. Because the thing is that the prospect is already thinking them. But if you can claim them, instead of them thinking them, you acknowledge them, gain trust, and then when you make your statements, they will believe you more. So if you want to stand out in a crowded marketplace, tell the truth. It makes you more authentic. And if you can do it with humor, you get even more bonus points. So it's like, listen, our gym has honestly pretty terrible parking. Our AC is kind of on and off. I don't have the best equipment, but our sessions are more fun than everyone else's because it's all we've got. If I said that, you now believe me, right? The thing is if you saw an ad that said that, you'd be like, I kind of believe this guy. He's probably not so bad, right? He's telling the truth. And I'll bet you his classes probably are fun. Now, if I just said we have the most fun sessions, you wouldn't believe me because anyone can say that. But what people won't say is the truth. So, number 6, show, don't tell. Now, this one is one of those ones that you will probably nod your head on and be like, yes, of course, show, don't tell. But the thing is when I say show, don't tell, I'm actually talking more about breaking down the reasoning. So kind of like I was alluding to earlier, which is instead of saying get more sales, describe what the experience of getting more sales means or what that moment would look like. Like selling somebody that you're running out of options they might experience, the overwhelm of having too many phones ring and not enough salespeople. That's the experience of getting advertising that works. Don't just say get more leads. Describe the experience of what getting more leads means. That's what they want to experience. They want to see their gym full. They want to know what it's like to have a line around the corner. They want to know what it's like where they actually have to reorganize their gym so that they can actually make room for more people at the session. Those are the good problems that we want to describe, which also, yes, they're problems. But if we describe the future problems they would prefer to have than their current problems, those are arguably some of the most compelling things that you can include in copy. Because if you can describe the problems they haven't thought about yet, then it's likely that you've experienced them or helped other people experience them, which then increases the likelihood that they believe it will happen for them. And so the big thing here in terms of show, don't tell, obviously from a creative perspective, you want the videos to demonstrate it. You want your creative, your images to demonstrate it, but your actual copy itself, you want to use more descriptive language that is specific to the experience they're going to have, the moments. And I'm going to repeat this theme because it's big. What is the moment that someone's going to experience that they got more sales? What does that moment feel like? What does it look like? What moment will they realize that this has actually occurred? Show me that sales has occurred. Describe to me that scenario. That is how you write exceptional copy. And what's cool about this is if you want to write unique copy, the way you describe that moment will always be unique to you compared to other people. And so you can always have fresh copy that sounds different and interesting because you're not just going to use the same words everyone uses. Number 7, tie benefits to status whenever possible. So a lot of people talk about benefits, not features, which is true. But I like to take this a step further mentally, which is a cookbook so fast and easy that all your friends will wonder how you found the time to be fit and cook for your family, right? That would be, okay, that's one level, right, of benefit. But the idea is, what is the, like, in that benefit, what we tied in is we tied in their friends. Their friends are going to give them status because of this thing, which is just a cookbook, right? So rather than say, hey, you're going to cook meals fast and easy, sure, that might be an element of it, right? But so fast that their friends are going to wonder how they're doing it is another level of this. And so whenever we can tie status, and this is why in the leads book I talk about this on page 140, I talk about the what, who, when framework. This is where this becomes incredibly important. And so what we want to do when we're thinking about status, and the reason that this framework works so well, is that we're thinking about the who, right? Obviously it's them, but who is giving them the status? Because there's status within different realms. Is it their family who's giving them status? Is it their friends? Is it their colleagues or coworkers? Is it their rivals? Is it their competitors? Who are they vanquishing? And so humans are a competitive species. We do desire status because it increases the likelihood that we're able to procreate and create more kids and acquire resources, right? And so we want to tie all of our benefits to what it's going to do, what they ultimately want, which is going to be status. Now, what's interesting is that the status that people get is going to be unique to that person within their subgroup. So if I'm going to try to describe status to a mother, it's going to be probably from kids that excel and other parents wonder how they're parenting, not from getting a Lamborghini, right? Now, if I'm trying to talk to a hustle bro who's 20 years old, then probably talking about a Lamborghini might convert. Now, it might not convert the type of hustle bro that I would be looking for, but nonetheless, it would convert some person who's interested in that, right? I'm all about Mosey Mobiles and having cash cars that you can buy for $7,000 and then not have to worry about car payment. So you can actually enrich your bank account rather than in other people's eyes. But point being, if we're writing copy, we have to meet them where they're at. And so the wording that we think about this, and also just to give you more color on this, is that we think past, present, future. So how am I going to create status for them with their spouse, them with their wife today, and in the future, and in the past? So now I have multiple different people who are giving and awarding status to this person through the copy we're writing, and different time periods. So it gives you endless variations and angles to approach the benefits. All right, and so you want to think the lines so that you can, or so that your friends' mouths will drop with envy. Right? That's what we're trying to describe here. Number 8 is that we want to use urgency and scarcity. All right, now, to be clear, urgency and scarcity, people lop them together, but they're actually different things. All right, so scarcity is a function of quantity, urgency is a function of time. All right, so that means that I give an unlimited amount of widgets that I'm trying to sell, but I'm only running my promotion until midnight. It's a function of time, that's urgency. If I only have 100 widgets, or I'm only choosing to sell 100 spots, which scarcity you can choose to have, then at that point, once 100 spots, maybe that takes a year to sell, or maybe it takes 5 seconds to sell, that line in the sand, no matter how many people want to buy it after that point, cannot buy it. Now, you can have both, but fundamentally, all we're trying to do is show that other people want it and that they have to act quickly. What we're trying to do is decrease the action threshold so they take action. The key to making urgency and scarcity work is making it legitimate. There's actually, I don't even know if there's really much more to it than actually having it be legitimate. There's really not another secret. Now, there's different types of urgency and scarcity, which I talk about in the offers books. So I have a whole chapter in the offers book, so page 104 for scarcity, and then the next chapter right afterwards, I have for urgency, which is page 112. And so I talk about 4 different types of urgency and different things that you can do to include scarcity in your offerings, whether it's products or services. But no matter what, you just need it to be real. That's all I can tell you. And the part that people struggle with is they're like, but what if someone wants to buy after midnight? What if someone wants to buy when I already said I have 100 spots? It means you say no. And you say no so you can maintain the reputation so that the next time you have scarcity, guess who the first buyer is going to be? The one who wasn't able to buy the last time. So you're digging your well before you're thirsty. I would always prefer to undersell my demand, so I always have more later. Otherwise, you're always going to be looking for the next kill, the next sale, and you're going to be putting the scarcity urgency up, but everyone knows it doesn't matter because you're not going to sell out. And that's where you start losing power. Now, number 9 is implied authority. All right, now this is a nasty one in a cool way. So this actually goes back to number 1. So if you're the only double secret black belt in the area, say it. Right? If you've transformed over, 1,000 people to black belts, say so. If you're the only, if you have a pro athlete client and they allow you to say it, say it. All of these things imply authority, and people listen to and trust authority figures more. And so that's how we've helped 5,000 gyms or 6,000 gyms over the last 7 years. And so part of authority is also just longevity. If you say we've been in business for 40 years, the likelihood that you are a legitimate business is pretty high, right? That's actually a pretty rare feat. So if you've been in business for a while, that's a big thing. Now, maybe you and your co-founders in aggregate have done over 20 years of advertising. Maybe it's 4 of you guys have all done 5 years, but it sounds better to say in aggregate we've done over 20 years of advertising, right? Now, again, the key here is if you have something as a hook, like as seen on Oprah's Best Boot Camps or Best Boot Camp in Vegas or Best Chiropractor in Vegas or Best whatever, this is why these tiny little awards matter so much, because you can actually even start a sales conversation with, did you find us on the Vegas Best Boot Camps list? Now, you might know that no one even knows that this list exists, and that's okay, because that list just gives you applied authority when you actually have the conversation with the prospect. And so at the end of the day, this is where proof does beat promise, all right? And so we're now getting to the believability of the claim, right? So this is why it's further down on here, because someone has to want the thing that you're offering first. Once they offer it, then all their warning bells are gonna go off, like, why should I believe this person? And that's where you wanna have the proof that they can believe you. And this is why documenting and substantiating the things that you have done and the people that you have helped ultimately makes you more likely to be persuasive, right? If you have 1,000 people who have, you have 1,000 testimonials versus somebody, or imagine you go to you're looking between 2 restaurants on Yelp, right? One has a 5-star with 3 reviews. That's 3. There you go. 3 reviews, right? Or you've got 3,000 reviews. Why not? Let's just stick with it. All right, but you've got a 4.6. Which one are you going for? For sure, no question, you're going to the one that has 4,000 reviews. Now it's 4,000 with a 4.6 rating rather than a 5. But that doesn't make sense. This one has 5. This is a 4.6. The proof demonstrates the implied authority that obviously these people have been around. They know what they're doing. They service a lot of customers. It's social proof. All right. Now, number 10. Always have a PS statement. All right. Now, why do we have a PS statement? So it's a power sentence, which is what I like to think about it, all right? Is that power sentence the 2 most read parts of advertising? Number 1, the headline. Number 2, the PS statement. And so if you have the 2 most read lines in all of your advertising, you better be sure you're thinking about what you're writing. And at the very least, have a PS statement, right? And so always have them and make sure that they're strong. And so I have a number of different strategies that I use for PS statements, and I'll tell you probably my top 3. All right, so number 1, in emails, I prefer to have some sort of sign off that gets people jazzed. They're very excited to have, I want to reward them for having read my email. So this is where I put jokes in, this is where I put fun stuff that's light, so that every once in a while when I do want to put a call to action, I make this PS a call to action that's strong, because I know everyone's going to read it and click it because I've trained them to click that link. All right, now, in an advertising setting, that PS statement's either going to be a disclaimer of who this is not for, which often works really, really well. Hey, by the way, if you're just getting started, this isn't for you. This is only for people doing X, Y, and Z. Click here. That's very strong as a PS statement. Another PS statement that works very well is just recapping everything in one sentence. Like, we've helped 1,000 people. We're good at making black belts. If you're serious about black belts, click here. Boom. Right? And so it's like, hey, if you just read to the bottom and skipped to the bottom like I do, this is the main nuggets, right? Your main points of persuasion all in one place. Now, you can also piggyback on this with a PPS statement and have 2 PS statements, because guess what? The only thing that's read the only thing that's read more than the normal copy, but less than the headline and the PS, is the PPS. So it's the 3rd most read statement in copy. So I would also include something there too. Number 11. It's amazing how effective this is and also how simple it is. And the only thing simpler is to not do it. So you have to have clear CTAs, so calls to action. If you do not tell someone exactly what to do next, you decrease the likelihood that they do it. So you want it to be stupid simple, not you know what to do. You have to They don't know, right? And so if you want X, click the button. And on the next page, fill out your information. Then select a convenient time for you to come in so that you won't miss, right? We want to be very clear about what they have to do and what's going to happen next, right? They're not going to guess, but here's a really, really cool sub point about this. If you tell someone to take an option or take a step, and then you tell them what's going to happen next, and then what you said is going to happen happens, you increase your say-do correspondence, meaning you gain influence over them because what you said after they followed your instruction came true. It's the reason Martha Stewart was such a powerful influencer compared to other people. She literally gave people recipes to follow. And she said, if you want to bake a cake, here's the 18 steps for baking a cake. And when you follow these 18 steps, you get a cake. And then when you get a cake and the cake tastes good, and then you tie it to status because other people say this cake is amazing and your family loves you for baking this cake, guess what happens? She gains influence over you because the next time she gives you instructions, you are more likely to follow them. And so we can embed this within the process of persuasion. So we want to basically make promises, keep promises, make promises, keep promises, make promises, keep promises, over and over and over again, where they actually take action. And that's the key part, is that they have to take action on something you said, and what you have to say will happen happens. That's what makes it. It's not just saying, oh, open loop, oh, just make promises. They have to take action. And then your promise gets fulfilled based on their action. So outline step 1, 2, 3, and outline what's going to happen next, because when it does, they'll believe you the next time you tell them to do something. And like, I believe in this so much, the reason I called my whole company Acquisition.com was so that the name of my company was the call to action. So if someone's like, hey, how do I find out more about Acquisition.com? Number 12. And this is so good. This is so good. I mean, all of these are good. This is why I use these. Like, I've really tried to 80-20 this for you guys. 3rd grade reading level. Most copy doesn't convert because people have to pause to understand it. And the moment they pause, they stop because it takes more horsepower than they're willing to dedicate to it. So we have to assume that the prospect is in a rush, doesn't care about what you have, has below a 3rd grade reading level, and is distracted. And that's the person we have to grab by the throat and bring into our world. All right? And so sentences that are too complex or use too big of words, you're not writing a college paper, right? You're writing an ad that has milliseconds to catch someone's attention. So make the process as frictionless as possible. So if you want to make easy copy, you want to make light copy, the way that you do that is you look at everything that makes copy hard to understand, you're writing hard to understand, and remove it. So great copy, the words fade into the background. No one's actually thinking about the words, they're just understanding what it says and then ultimately being more likely to be persuaded by it. So if I have something that's written at 9th grade reading level or 3rd grade reading level, so many people cannot read at a 9th grade reading level. Many people can read, but they can't read at that level. And so if we want to automatically disqualify 2/3 of the people who read the copy, keep it at 9th grade. But if you want everyone who can read to read, then keep it at 3rd grade. Look at the most popular books in America. They are purposely written because the authors know what they're doing at a level that most people can understand. So fancy equals friction. Simple equals sales. I put every ad that I write through a free reading level tool, and I continue to edit the copy as if it is 3rd grade reading level. Now, I'll give you a couple quick tips on this, all right? So number 1 is you want short sentences, small words, big promises.
Traffic.
Right? Big proof. You want few adverbs and better verbs, meaning instead of he quickly ran, say he sprinted. And so we want word concision. We want to have as few words as possible to communicate the point, but we want to keep the words themselves as simple as possible. Now, if you're like, wait a second, sprinting versus running fast, sprinting is a more advanced word, and this is why writing copy is difficult. We have to think, is there another word that people also understand that I don't have to use 2 words and I can use 1? Now, at the highest levels, I will never prioritize concision over simplicity. So simplicity trumps concision, meaning fewer words. Concision itself is like a 9th grade word. All right, which is using fewer words to say the same thing as many words. Feel better? But you probably understood it better. That's what's crazy, is this stuff actually works. All right, and so these are 12, but you know, I do like over delivering. So I'm gonna give you one more bonus, lucky number 13. All right, so instead of 13, because that might be unlucky. So we'll put bonus here. I don't believe in superstition, but let's just roll with it. Is whenever possible, use humor, all right? Because if you look at the Old Spice ad, the highest converting ad of all time, to my knowledge, in terms of it took something that was not a market leader and made it the market share Dominator, is it was funny, right? And the thing is that if you can entertain and educate at the same time, you win, right? Because entertainment makes something significantly broader. Education is what's going to change someone's behavior. And so we want our ads to both entertain and educate. Entertainment to go broad, education to go deep. The education changes the behavior, means that they take the click. That means that they do what you want them to do. This is why. Now, if I had to pick one thing to cut out, it would be humor. All right, because you can make ads that convert with the other 12. But if you want the extra sauce, right? Take us to that thing you've always wanted to go to, right? If you want that extra sizzle, then you can add humor in. The difficulty is, how do you make something funny for everyone? And this is where testing is so important, right? If you look at how comedians, I'm a big studier of comedy because I really enjoy it, how comedians make their whole specials is that they will go to many, many clubs, test new material, and they might find when they do a 60-minute set that there's only 8 minutes that people really liked. They then front load the first 8 minutes of their next set, and then they have 52 minutes of other stuff, and they find 2 more minutes that people like, and they put it there at the front for the next one. Now they've got 10 minutes. And that's how they build their sets until the whole 60 minutes is.
Yeah. Decent episode. I think I'm going to have to make a phone call here, so I'll probably mute the stream. It's interesting watching this stream and seeing when I kind of get into a crappier, lower reception area. I'm streaming off of the hotspot feature on a Verizon phone. And I can see on the laptop when it says YouTube is not receiving enough data. Done with the phone calls for now. Or phone call. Didn't think the person would answer, which was good. Just left a voicemail. We'll see if they call back or when. I now have 9.5 hours to go. Listen to the Startup Ideas podcast with Greg Eisenberg. Newest episode, 5 new tools from Google AI to make money and be productive. Insanity. Sounds meh, but something to listen to.
Honestly, Google AI has been absolutely crushing it. Josh Woodward, who's leading up a lot of Google AI's efforts, came on the pod and showed some unreleased features, some experimental features, and some products that are going to make you a more productive person. I brought him on. I'm not sponsored by Google at all, just so I can learn how to use these products. I feel like I haven't spent enough time with Google AI products, so I had one of the top guys, one of the top dogs, come in and explain it to us. This is a primer on how to use Google AI product suite and what you need to know. So I'm glad Josh came on and showed me what I need to pay attention to. All right, Josh, we're going to cover some of the most interesting of Google's AI products today. What are you going to take us through? And by the end of the episode, what are people going to learn?
Well, we're going to try to show a lot of stuff today. So we'll try to do these 5 demos in about the next 20 or 30 minutes. And I'm really hoping you're going to learn kind of where a lot of Google's AI is at the frontier. So we're going to talk about the Gemini app. We're going to create some videos. We'll be able to go dive into research, create UI and screens for code, and then do some automation, computer use stuff.
And while you're taking us through that, could you give your sort of inside tips and tricks on how to use these apps? Because I know that some people, people played with Gemini, people played with Flow, people played with NotebookLM, but they're looking for, how do I get the most out of these products? Could you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, cool. All right, let's start from the top, Gemini.
All right, sounds good. So we've opened a bunch of tabs here, so you'll get to see how we go. So I think a lot of your viewers have used Gemini. Hopefully they use it every day. What you've got here is basically the home screen, right where you land. And I'm going to show you some stuff that's available in our kind of pro version of Gemini. That's the one that's $20 a month. And one of the things we've been putting a lot of emphasis into is how do we start to create more interesting replies? So I'm just going to paste in a prompt I had written earlier. This is teach me about photosynthesis, make a quiz to go with it. And so you can see here in the upper left, we're using the 2.5 Pro model. This is the great model that's great not only at kind of thinking, which is what it's doing now. You can expand that and kind of see how it's starting to put all this together. We've also got the 2.5 Flash model, really fast replies. And so as this is coming together, what you're going to start to see is like not only a traditional reply as it breaks down and teaches you the concept, but also this quiz that is going to go along with it. So here comes the reply back. I'm just going to close the thinking. And you can see here it's given a nice little succinct answer. And then you see it's linked to YouTube video, which is great. That's a new feature we've been adding in, as well as this quiz. And so what are the main ingredients for plants? What does it need? And we've even built in a hint here, it looks like, so you can think about this. So let's see, they probably need something like this. Do you want to take a guess here, Greg?
This is bringing me back, Josh, to be honest, like my elementary school ideas. I sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide seems about right.
There you go. So that's one of the things we're seeing with Gemini. Tons of students are using it. Right. This Pro plan, we've just done a big student offer. We'll start some more of that for back to school. So anyway, that's coming for a lot of new student features. It's kind of fun. I'm going to create a new chat here. And one of the other things we're seeing people do a lot with Gemini, you asked about tips and tricks and so what the power users are doing, is they're actually creating scheduled actions. So again, I'll just type in a prompt or paste in here, send me a digest of the OKC Thunder info every morning at 7 a.m. If you're an NBA fan, I love the Thunder. This is gonna go out and it's gonna do a couple of things. It's actually gonna construct kind of the first info digest. Think if you're the president, for example, you'll get like a daily briefing. And so this you can think of as almost a daily briefing. And here it is. It's gone ahead and created this digest. And what's cool is every morning I'll just get an update about here's what the players are doing, here's any kind of off-season trades, and you can go in and edit this. In the past, people would have created maybe Google News alerts or had to go through and dig and assemble all this info. So this makes it really easy to do. So that's that one.
On that piece, if you're, say you're like an entrepreneur or solopreneur type person, like what are similar digests that you think would be helpful for someone who's, a business owner?
Yeah, so we see a lot of business owners starting to use Gemini too. They do a couple of things. One, they track how their own brand or their own store is doing. And so it's good to kind of keep an eye on what people are saying about you, how you might be out there. The other thing they do is they do that for competitors. So they may get their own digest, but they also study that. The other thing we've seen with some of these actions, Greg, as well as deep research, one of the main features in Gemini 2 is they really will send certain products they're tracking. And they may do research on those products. I know someone who kicks off a new product every morning for a deep research report, and maybe they're thinking about a product they might want to build or put something in their inventory. So those are ways people are using it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sam Altman, the co-founder of OpenAI, just said that it is the era of the idea guy, and he is not wrong. I think that right now is an incredible time to be building a startup. And if you listen to this podcast, chances are you think so too. Now, I think that you can look at trends to basically figure out what are the startup ideas you should be building. So that's exactly why I built ideabrowser.com. Every single day, you're going to get a free startup idea in your inbox, and it's all backed by high quality data trends. How we do it, people always ask. We use AI agents to go and search what are people looking for and what are they screaming for in terms of products that you should be building, and then we hand it on a silver platter for you to go check out. We do have a few paid plans that take it to the next level, give you more ideas, give you more AI agents and more, almost like a ChatGPT for ideas with it. But you can start for free, ideabrowser.com, and if you're listening to this, I highly recommend it.
Okay, the next one is actually one that's been a little bit in the news this morning, just about an hour ago. So we've been adding a lot of video into Gemini, and today's announcement is actually the ability to take this Veo 3 model, which is unbelievable because it has incredible realism and physics and everything on the visual side, but it also adds sound. And so you can create these videos. They're 8-second clips, 720p. In this version, it's now 2 times faster than we first announced it at Google I/O. And I'm curious, Greg, we can just take a request here. Is there a certain video or anything you're interested in, or we can try one?
Yeah, I mean, I recently launched a new startup called ideabrowser.com, which basically brings you new startup ideas every single day.
Yeah.
And I've been playing with ads, AI sort of ads. So I wonder, could you do something like I don't know if this is possible.
Yeah,
but
it's
you ever see those TikTok or Instagram ads where it's like a podcast studio, but it's like a fake podcast studio? So it's it's like, it almost looks like a Joe Rogan studio.
Yeah. So it's almost like a fake podcast studio with two people, maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
A host and a guest. And what do you want them to be talking about, or the sound effects or something, maybe?
Well, so can I have them say something, like a script almost?
Yeah, in the new version, you will be able to. Yeah.
So I mean, I just found out about ideabrowser.com. I'm finding the most interesting startup ideas and trends there. Can't believe I didn't know it existed.
Okay, let's try it. I'm going to make it a little shorter just because it's an 8-second clip.
Oh, true.
We can send this one off, and then we can come back and look at it. You can see it's going to take about a minute or two to generate.
Great.
Okay, cool. So let's keep that going in the background. That'll be interesting to see. The big new feature today is rolling out. It's at about 1% right now because we just started it. Is the ability to also bring an image as a reference in, or a photo. So you'd be able to maybe have a photo of that podcast studio you want, and then, or maybe have the certain people or whatnot, and kind of have that sort of animate and come to life. So that's pretty cool.
Which is so important, right? You need, having that context ultimately is going to get better results.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. The last thing I want to show is actually, while this is generating, I'll just create a new chat. There's some stuff we've been talking about and started rolling out around how we're going to make Gemini the most personal, proactive, and powerful assistant for you. And that first P, the personal, is something that I just want to show maybe teaser for, but keep it kind of short here. But if I go in, there's an area called personal context. And you can see here, we've been talking about this, or testing it internally, where with your permission, you'll be able to link in things like your Google Photos data or your search data or your YouTube data. And you can start to get some pretty interesting replies. Again, with your permission, your ability to kind of turn these on and off. But I've been using it when you're asking about tips and tricks. It's really amazing if you're planning like an upcoming trip. It knows that I have, my wife and I have 4 kids. It can suggest things based on places I've been in the past that I might like. So like, oh, you're gonna go to Italy, you have 4 kids, here's family-friendly restaurants near the Colosseum. Or it might be like, hey, I checked your past trip photos and it looks like you have this interest in this hobby, like, I don't know, pottery or sketching, and it will kind of suggest things that way. So I just wanted to show this to you and your viewers as like a little bit of a kind of a view of what's coming. And so we can share more of that when it's ready.
Cool, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think I actually tweeted this morning that, I think it was, I said, Chrome's 3 billion users suddenly look like the most valuable data set on Earth. And I think it's really, Google is such an interesting place because it knows so much about you because we use the products every day. We live in those products. So my hope is like, that's why I think a lot of people are getting a lot of good, are starting to get really good outputs out of these products, is because of that context. So just something, obviously I'm not like sponsored by Google or anything like that. We have no relationship, but I'm just something that I've noticed, and I'm hopeful that the more context that Google starts, drip feeding into me, because I use Chrome, because I use Gmail, because I use these other products, I'm hopeful that the outputs are going to continue to get better.
Yeah, well, that's actually how we're thinking about it is, for someone like you who's excited to link this context together, we want to make that possible. And then you can see from that kind of look ahead, there'll be other Google products that, again, if you want to, you'll be able to link in and then use it as context. So, okay, cool. Let's see. Let's check back in real quick and see if our video, oh, here it is. All right, here we go. Okay, so here's our fake podcast studio. I'm making sure I got my audio on. Let's see how it came out.
Just found out about ideabrowser.com. I'm finding the most interesting startup ideas there.
Yeah.
Cool. Visually, by the way, this looks stunning. Like, this is exactly what I had in mind. And I think, like, from my perspective, I'm looking at this as people don't want to read anymore. So if you're designing a website, if you're building apps and stuff like that, they're used to Instagram stories. They're used to just consuming YouTube. They're used to consuming video.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at my portfolio of businesses, and I'm thinking like, okay, where can I create video to make it more engaging, to tell my story better? And to me, this is like an unfair advantage.
Well, I think one of the things we're seeing both with the video generation and Imagen, the image generation, is Gemini makes it so easy to just quickly explore lots of ideas. And then, you can download it, share it, drop it in wherever you want. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
I guess the hard part becomes, how do you come up with good ideas to generate, interesting content, right? People on X, they call it taste, that's like the word of the month. Do you have any insight as to like, if you're trying to get the most out of some of these video models, then you want to come up with good ideas, what do you recommend to people?
Yeah, well, I think one thing is actually an interesting segue, because we can start talking about Flow, one of our other products, but it's like, I try to just look at lots of content for inspiration.
Yeah.
And so like, if I cut over here just to show you, like this was a product we announced at Google I/O about 50 days ago when we're recording this now. And, this is really an idea of like, how do you make an AI filmmaking tool where lots of people can create with it. And so we worked with some incredible creators. There's all kinds of features. But I think one of the things, just to jump to it, Greg, is like one of the parts of this product, which is fun, is called Flow TV. And it's just a huge gallery of lots of different things people have created. So here's like always a fun one. This is like off-season Saints. And what's fun is just like with your keyboard, you can navigate through these different channels and kind of see stuff people are creating. And we've actually made it where you can show the prompts too. for each of these. And so one of the big themes we're seeing around all of this generative media creation is around remixing and being able to kind of take inspiration and kind of put your own sort of touch on it. So this is kind of the gallery viewing, see people skydiving with glaciers and all kinds of crazy stuff. But how this tool works is actually kind of fun. You go out to labs.google/flow, and you have a landing page here where it's like different projects I've been working on, giant penguin walking around, or like mountain biking through like a lava field here. But you can kind of go into these things and create different shots, different scenes. And all of this, of course, is backed by both Veo 2 and Veo 3. And so you can go in and some of these later that goes with actually hear the like lava magma crackling in the background as the bike is going through. And what's interesting with this is we've tried to make it where, say you generate something with a prompt and you just say add to scene, and now you're suddenly in a really easy to use, lightweight kind of editor. And you can do all the normal things like make clips shorter, but you can also do things like extend them. And this is real, the power of AI starts to come through, because you can say things like, I don't know, make a huge vulture come in from the sky, right? And this is something where we can stitch this together. And when you send this off, it'll take a minute or so here and it'll generate. And what's amazing about Flow and Veo as a model is that we're starting to get to this point where you have consistent characters and scenes. And that's been one of the biggest requests from creatives all around the world. And so there's a few other things that are cool about Flow. Maybe I can show you while this is generating. So one is we make it really easy for you as a creative to generate lots of options. So you can get 2 videos at a time or 4 at a time. And this is really like propelling how fast people can explore a creative space. We also give you in this tool, again, because it's kind of for filmmakers, creative types, lots of choice on the model. Do you want audio? Do you not want audio? Do you want the fast version? Do you want the high quality version? So a lot of control here. The other thing that's cool is we allow you to go text to video if you want to write, big prompt, or frame to video. And this is actually where you can give it a reference image and then be able to kind of create things based on that. And so it's very similar to what I was showing you with Gemini. Oh, look, it just came back. So I'm just going to play it from the top. You can see we've now stitched together 2 shots. So we're at 14 seconds total. So I'll just play it here.
It's honestly like mind-numbingly good. Like, it's so good that it's just like, I can't believe it. It's hard to believe how good it is.
It's crazy, and when you think about it, it's all generated here in seconds. You saw that big vulture kind of. So I think what we're starting to see is, and what's been really interesting as we've been building Flow, it's a Google Labs product. One of our big values is we like to co-create with people. So we've been working with filmmakers around the world to develop this tool, and that's really how we see it, as a tool. And what's interesting, Greg, is folks that are top tier Hollywood types, they see this thing and they're like, oh my goodness, I can do so much with this. And it kind of raises the ceiling of what's possible. Then you've got people like me. I'm not a filmmaker, but I might have an idea, or I might have a project I want to work on. And now I've suddenly got this incredible tool that's so easy to use, it makes it happen. There's a huge roadmap here of where we're going. Like if I switch over here to like the frames to video, I'm able to kind of bring in different frames here and sort of compare them. This is super cool. We've got tons of camera shots, like dolly in, dolly out. You can jib, all the things you might expect to kind of pan, tilt, zoom around this. And I think this is really where it's going, is like making these things super easy and intuitive to use for people.
Yeah, and my guess is, if you're not a creative director and you don't know what dolly in means or dolly out, whatever, like I'm sure you could go to Gemini, say I'm creating a script, and and I need help kind of thinking about how I can get the most out of this product.
Yep. And that's actually what a lot of people do. They'll start in Gemini, they'll craft the prompts, they'll get help, they'll iterate really quickly, and then you can bring that right into Flow. Or you can create it from Gemini itself now. And so we're seeing a lot of that kind of back and forth. I think Flow, you can think of it as really for folks who might have a longer duration project. They may want to do something over several minutes, or maybe we've seen people do up close to an hour of stitching things together, whereas Gemini is really quick, those little 8-second hits, and that you can kind of put together really fast.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, real quick on like the Hollywood versus individuals piece, like for me, I'll only speak for myself. Like I'm most interested, like of course I think this is going to change Hollywood, but and make their lives more productive. But I'm more interested in, like for me, I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, as a person who's building startups, and needs to tell stories, this is going to help me compete at a way higher level than I've ever been able to before. I mean, of course I could have done this, but it would have cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay an agency to build it.
Yeah, what's interesting, what we're seeing is kind of this barbell effect where folks that maybe have the knowledge, have the expertise, they're taking tools like this and running with it. And then we're seeing folks, maybe solopreneurs or others, who may have never had the skills or the access or the money or any number of things. And now they suddenly have a tool that they can kind of use to customize for what they want. It's interesting, both of those effects are true in this case. So yeah, so that's Flow, and it's a lot of fun to play with, so you can check it out. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit. This is one I'm sure your audience has heard a bit more about, NotebookLM, and you've talked about it too, so thank you. I think I want to show a couple of ways, again, more just like power user things. So Notebook, obviously a lot of people know. If you don't, you can bring in your sources, you can get insights, you can create podcasts and sort of see kind of where the answers are coming from. So that's kind of the high level idea behind Notebook. It's been so fun to watch it grow. It just keeps growing. So this is the home screen of Notebook. Just as a quick walkthrough, if no one's ever seen it, you've got 3 panels here. You've got your sources. You can bring in any kind of file that you want, docs, websites, YouTube videos, PDFs, etc. You can chat with those sources, and then you can also just start creating stuff in the studio panel. And so kind of the most common use case a lot of people do is they'll load up some sources, and this is a notebook about the California gold rush. We were studying this, my son and I, right before the end of the year, and you can type in a question like, what were the economic implications of the gold rush? And the real thing that sets NotebookLM apart from other tools out there is its incredible ability to sort of show its work and cite things. And so you're seeing it come back right now as it streams in. And of course, it'll give you these nice replies like, here are the implications of it. But as you scroll through this, you might be like, oh, I really want to learn more about that. And when you click on it, you can see it just takes you right to the document and kind of where you found the information. So that's kind of one of the core things. I think people have heard about the podcast, so I don't have to play the podcast here today. But I wanted to show you some of the new stuff coming. And some of the newer features. So what a lot of people have started doing is actually you can manually add sources, but you can also discover sources now. And you can just describe things like, give me more economic info about the gold rush. And what's going to happen there is when you send this out, we're going to take kind of a shot at trying to find other sources that are relevant to what you're looking for. And so here it's come back. These are a set of websites. You can see some PDFs on the web. What's really cool about this, Greg, one of my favorite features is it gives you the name of the source, and then this little byline, it tells you why we think this source is relevant to your notebook and what you might learn from it. So it's super cool to be able to kind of see like, oh, this is talking more about banking, or this is talking more about wages and labor markets. So with one click, you just tap it, they all get added to your notebook. It's made it really easy for people to kind of spider out and find other information. And then once you've got the information in there, you can start to transform it. And one of the kind of sleeper hits that's gone really great is this mind map feature. So this gives you the ability to take all that knowledge and you can just expand these and find kind of like all kinds of little trails down here, like hard rock mining and what goes into it. And as you click through these, it'll bring you back to your sources, it'll help you understand it. And so we think the big idea with NotebookLM is it's a whole new way to understand knowledge. And what's been really cool is we've enabled a lot of sharing recently in the last couple of weeks. So people are creating notebooks and sharing them either with their friends or their colleagues at work or even in a class. and you're starting to get almost like this collaborative knowledge exploration, which is a whole new level of Notebook LM and what's driving a lot of growth too right now.
Yeah, this is really cool. My quick use case for this sort of stuff is I'm constantly looking at building or buying businesses, and if I am going to do that, I need to get smart about a particular topic. So for whatever reason right now, I'm like exploring like the book publishing industry and the music management space and the music publishing industry. So kind of like media rights and stuff like that. Of course, I can go and read posts and books about it, but you know, when I'm in the car or I'm going for walks, I just like to just listen.
Yeah, just drop it.
Just drop it in.
Yep.
So, you know, if you're like me, I think that using something like this to get like a very personalized level up is good. Of course, I still listen to podcasts. Of course, I still watch YouTube videos, but this is kind of like, for me, has been like a completely different experience.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other really interesting things we're seeing people do with Notebook, and there's a ton of students that use Notebook, and I think that's been another area. It's great for kind of being able to go deep in the areas you want to. And I don't know if you do this with the podcast feature. I'll get it going, and then there's, you know, an ability where you can like have this interactive mode, right? Where you can call in and they'll be like, oh, hey, Greg, what's your question? And then you could ask your question, and it's all grounded again in those sources. So it kind of makes this really personalized learning and knowledge exploration possible.
Totally.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's really cool. I think like a lot of people listening here, like these are the people that like to level up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm excited for people to try this out.
Yeah. All right, cool. We can switch. We can keep going. Are you good? Yeah. We can go for another one. Okay, so the next one I want to show you, this is a super new one. It's called Stitch. So it's a Google Labs experiment. You can see it's in beta. And what we're really interested in is how can, you can see here, design at the speed of AI, but how can you go from an idea to like a mobile or a web interface? And we've got a bunch of examples, and we're kind of playing around with this where we make it really easy for you to kind of describe what you want, and Stitch kind of builds it with Gemini. So why don't I'll jump into this one. I'll just jump over tabs. This was what I was working on this morning just before, just to show you kind of how it works. But you basically describe something like, make me an app for discovering California activities, show some destination, musical events, and trip planning. And Stitch just like gets to work. Like it will start creating all of these different screens for you. And what we're finding, what's super interesting, Greg, like if I click on one, I'll just go into the first one, this California, is like with one description and a tab, you can copy this code and you've got like the front end code ready to go. Or this is super cool. You just tap Figma and it'll copy it. You can see in the bottom right, and you've got a Figma file or like ready to paste in. And these are not screenshots. These are actual designs, which is what's really amazing. You can go in then in Figma if you want and move stuff around, change it, etc. And so this one is maybe a good example of a Google Labs experiment where it's hyper focused on, in this case, Greg, since you're talking a lot about how do you kind of level up or get started, we originally thought like, oh, who might like this? Maybe it's designers, maybe it's PMs. Turns out engineers really like this tool because they can describe maybe if it's like someone trying to start a company and they get like good base level of designs, and then they can edit it from there. And so front end code always maybe a little bit harder for some people. Maybe you don't want to do all the details or whatever. This kind of helps accelerate that and get you to kind of a baseline that you can edit that draft basically.
If you had to, if you had to say, what is the one killer feature of Stitch? Like what is the one thing that Stitch does better than any other vibe coding tool? What do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're really trying to make it where a lot of vibe coding today, you might write a long prompt and then there's a lot of back and forth. And so what we've tried to do with Stitch is minimize that back and forth and then give you the assets and the controls to kind of do common things. So like one of the things I love about Stitch is you can also just go up here and say edit theme, make it all dark mode, change all the corner radius, change all the font. like common things that people get stuck on. We're really trying to focus on like the design quality here, but also making it really portable so you can move it to a tool like Figma if you want to go deeper. And I think that's starting with the design process is kind of how we're really thinking about Stitch.
That's interesting because I think in general with AI, like the chat has become the interface, understandably, but I think that some things are just not meant for chat, and sometimes chat is overwhelming. So I think having sort of a hybrid of chat with some, you know, productized buttons and stuff like that, I think is interesting.
Well, it's one of the things, it's interesting, you're hitting on an interesting pattern we're seeing is how do you get beyond the chat box?
Yeah.
Because, you know, and it doesn't mean we're going to get rid of it. You can see Stitch, obviously you can chat with it over here on the left and kind of edit if you want, or bring in images as references. But I think across Stitch, across Flow, definitely across the Gemini app, you're going to see a lot more features like that photosynthesis example, where we're trying to get people into a more natural state. Chat is not always the most natural state for interacting with these models. So, yeah.
Totally. And yeah, it's not, and I don't know, for someone like me, like I just find that sometimes chat is for me, and then sometimes I need to click around, and that it works better for me. So this is interesting.
Yeah.
Do we have time? Do we have time for one more? Is that?
Do you want to do one more? Can we do it? Okay, let's do. Okay, the last one I want to show you is Project Mariner. So Project Mariner, this is our project. It's really experimental again, prototype, fresh out of the lab. We're really trying to understand how can these models navigate things like the web, where you can give it tasks and it can go off and either do research or data entry or other things and kind of put this together. So what's really amazing about our Gemini models right now is they've gotten very good with the 2.5 series at planning, multi-step actions, and being able to also kind of raise their hand and be like, hey, I need help, I'm stuck here. And so that's one of the things we're exploring with this Mariner project. Okay, Greg, so here's the home screen of Project Mariner, and you can see the giant experimental label at the top. And what we've been exploring this idea of computer use and agents actually back since December. Our first version of Mariner was a Chrome extension. It didn't always work all the time, but it was like eager and it tried hard. So what we've tried to do with this is kind of, you can think of almost as like Mariner 2.0, is pull it out of the Chrome extension, put it in a website, and in the background, instead of operating on your local browser, we've created an entire infrastructure with virtual machines. And so what that means is you can spin off lots of tasks at the same time. And so what's really cool here is with Mariner, you've got, you know, these tabs at the top, your active tasks, things maybe you've saved, tasks that have ended. And I'm just going to show you, this is a test account I have here, but we'll just pick one, I don't know, find me 3 jobs, just as one of the sample ones to kick off. And what's interesting is you can see here is kind of preparing your session. This is actually firing up that virtual machine that I was talking about. And it's going to go off and start creating kind of a plan for this action. And you can see there's the browser, it's up. And you can actually see how the model thinks here on the right panel. And this has been fun, actually, as we've been testing this. This is available for some of our Google AI subscribers right now. It's kind of in a limited test use case. People sometimes will just watch this thing because it's actually kind of interesting. It will navigate through pages, it'll scroll, you can see its thought process. And I mean, I remember the first time, Greg, I saw this, it was like, I was just shocked. Like I was just kind of watching something that was like, oh, I know how to do that, and it now knows how to start to do that. And so you can see we gave it a thing here, like find 3 job possibilities for, you know, engineers in New York on this thing, Climate Base. And it's going through, it's now navigated to the site, it's finding a job posting for a senior data engineer. Now it's searching through kind of a broader set of listings. It's just gonna keep going. And so it's kind of interesting as you go back to the home screen, and you're now gonna imagine like a whole dashboard of these tasks you can fire up. So I'll throw another one in the mix. We were talking before we jumped on about, I'm in Oklahoma City right now as we're recording this, and this one is like kind of a fun one. It's like, go find 5 restaurants in Oklahoma City, add them to my Google Maps, places to visit. And so it's going to, again, fire up the browser. There's the browser, goes to Google, does some searches. And what's interesting about this is it'll start to do kind of the searches as it goes through, and we haven't sped this up. Sometimes there are tasks that no human could ever do. And I think ones.
What's an example of something like that?
Well, one of the things we do with our project Jules, the coding agent, is we'll do a bug bash. We'll file a bunch of bugs, or now we're kind of dictating bugs and we let AI transform them into bugs. But it's like you can just put Jules on a GitHub backlog and it'll fix like 30 bugs in a minute. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you can kind of imagine these leaps that are coming. They're kind of superhuman in that way.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think that we don't even know how people are going to be using this because it's so early. Like there's going to be so many different tasks that, like, I'm trying to think in my mind. I'm like, okay, like how would I use this in my day-to-day, right? Like what are tasks that I have?
Yeah. Well, and I think the key to all this is how do you design these AI systems in a way that are both transparent and you can trust them and intervene. And like, this is a good example. I just came back. Look here, it says like needs your attention, right?
Right.
So it's like, I tried to click this, you can review it. And if you read through the log here, it's like, we've paused because I'm trying to click the save button, but since I can't log into your account, would you like me to do something else and kind of help here? And so this is actually a good example of how we're exploring, and this is why it's all experimental right now, but like, when is the right time to come back to you? And when is the time where over time, maybe you build up trust with this and you kind of let it go? But all of these are new kind of human-computer interaction design problems as well as technical challenges.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Josh, you got me fired up. Like I did, first of all, I didn't even know that this existed. I've played with, ChatGPT Operator. I've done a tutorial on it. I want to play with this. I want to try it out. I want to play with all this. So thank you for getting my creative juices flowing on this.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and if you or others, like, we put all this stuff on the Google Labs site. It's just labs.google. As far as I know, it's the only site that has like a hot pink navigation banner. But you can see as you scroll through, there's Mariner, Stitch, Jules.
Okay.
We talked about all of these, but this can be a place you can go get some of the cutting edge, latest experiments from Google and AI.
Cool. Well, I'll include that in the show notes for people to go and check out, take it for a spin, and that's all I ask people to do. It's like, yes, it's great Josh, I appreciate you coming on, sharing all this sauce, but it's, stop listening to us and just start playing with it.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Josh. See ya.
Yeah, boring episode. Couple of unmarked Smokies sitting in the center divider. I will listen to a podcast called Hacked, talking about the McDonald's hiring robot hack, whatever that is. Yeah, I think we'll go all in podcast for now.
So, Gavin, were you at the Coldplay concert in Boston last night?
Sadly, I missed that. It's
did? Who are you with?
Yeah, exactly. I was at home with my wife, but yeah, wow, how insane.
There's just so many layers to that story. It's impossible to get away from. It'll be 72 hours of memes. Dave, were you at the Coldplay concert in Boston last night? And if so, were you with Woody, your astronaut friend? Did you take Woody to the concert?
No, counselor. I was here in Santa Cruz last night.
Oh, you were in Santa Cruz on a business trip? Okay.
The funny thing is, if they had not reacted the way they did, the camera would have just panned away.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No one would have ever known.
There is some great irony to the head of people and human resources being in an affair with the CEO, apparently. Allegedly.
Don't jump to conclusions, Jason.
No, it could have.
He could have been cracking her back, like when you get the back tight.
Yes, it could have been a chiropractic.
Yeah, chiropractic move.
Oh my God.
Let your winners ride. Rain Man David Saxon. And it says we open source it to the fans, and they've just gone crazy with it. Love you guys. Queen of
All right, let's get to work. It is the slow news weeks of summer, and we are delighted to have fan favorite, super intelligent bestie, Gavin Baker with us from Atreides. How are you, sir? How's your summer shaping up?
Fantastic. It's been awesome.
Stock market is back. That's good for you because you invest in both public and private companies, yeah?
My firm does, yes. Yeah.
Gavin, let me ask you a question. How do you price tariffs today? So where do you think this ends up? Obviously, there's a lot of back and forth, and everyone's trying to make a read on what the end game is. What's your market take as you're making investments right now and where we end up on the tariff front?
It is a good question. It's open. We're going to see what happens with sectoral tariffs. I think it's hard. You're doing the Winning AI Summit. It's going to be hard to win in AI if we put tariffs on semiconductors. But for a lot of what I do for now, tariffs are not super relevant. But for the market, for the economy, they are relevant. But for AI, they're maybe a little less relevant because I think everyone is maybe a little more sophisticated about the downsides of tariffs for constructing data centers here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, don't we look at the tariff situation and say, despite the shock and awe of the opening salvo, it's quite a boring position now. It just seems to be reciprocity and reasonable reciprocity at that. Yeah, that's how we would sort of categorize the end game here.
I would say for everyone but China. It is, and we've clearly reached some sort of deal with China, rare earths for H20s and Mi308Xs. But it's interesting, and one of the trade deals that has been finalized is Vietnam, and there's a special carve-out for goods that were transshipped from China through Vietnam. So they are clearly focused on China more than almost any other country, rightly or wrongly. But yeah, and I do think there is, there was maybe 3 months where Trump said he did not care about the stock market, but now he's back to quoting the market at all-time highs.
Yes.
He clearly cares and is clearly very sensitive to market feedback. So I think that will be a dampening mechanism on tariff volatility. But, they passed the bill and he immediately went back to tariffs. And, we'll see where we land in August. But I just think the most important thing in the market by far is AI. Kind of overwhelms everything else.
Absolutely. And I guess the other big story with the market, and we'll get into the H20s, David Sachs will be joining us in a moment, so he'll be jumping in halfway through it. But let's start with maybe this soft launch of the firing of Jerome Powell. On Wednesday morning, Bloomberg reported that Trump was likely to fire Powell soon. after talking with Republican lawmakers. Shortly after that, the New York Times reported that Trump had actually drafted Powell's termination letter. The market instantly reacted negatively, dropped 1%. Bond yields rose about 10 basis points. You can see the blips here on these charts starting around 11:30 a.m. when the article was published. Polymarket reported Jerome Powell out as Fed chair in 2025, spiked up to 30% on Wednesday before dropping back down to 20%. Trump quickly squashed these rumors, markets rebounded, and Trump said, we're not planning on doing anything regarding Powell. Some people speculating maybe this was Trump testing the market reaction, as you talked about earlier, Gavin. He does seem to care about the market, as most presidents do. If you remember, Trump nominated Powell as Fed chair November 2nd, 2017, and he has gone on a tirade the last couple of months, calling Powell stupid, numbskull, stubborn, low IQ, a knucklehead, mentally average. It's a long list of descriptors of the person he placed. Powell's term ends May of next year. White House officials have confirmed Trump is in the process of selecting his successor. Polymarket says that could be Kevin Warsh. It hasn't actually ever happened, right? Fed chair fired. But we have inflation coming back a bit. If you all remember, there's a dual mandate for the Fed: keep unemployment low, check, that's pretty good, and keeping inflation under control. That's been going very well since our massive inflation spike over the past couple years. And here we go. CPI ticked up 10% from 2.4 to 2.7%, 30 basis point increase over May. So any thoughts, Gavin, on these macro issues around inflation coming back a bit, the stock market at an all-time high, and unemployment? If you believe the unemployment data, and we've had a bunch of debates here about that, how correct is it, being at close to an all-time low in our lifetimes? Let's go macro.
Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into the CPI bouncing up a little bit. There's base rate effects, I think, on a month-over-month basis. And if you looked at, what economists call core, super core, different, ways to maybe smooth out CPI, I think inflation is still relatively contained. But I mean, a lot of very smart people are convinced that tariffs will lead to inflation. We'll see. There's certainly sound theoretical arguments for why they will, but it does look like maybe the overseas exporters are eating a little bit more of the tariffs than people thought that they would, which is good for U.S. inflation. But the combination of a very weak dollar and tariffs theoretically should lead to a little more inflation. Firing Powell, I worry that the market only went down 1%. I do think the market would go down quite a bit more if Trump did fire Powell. I think it would be a mistake. I hope he doesn't do it. And, there are very sound reasons for the Federal Reserve to be independent. And I hope he does not read from that trial balloon down 1% that that's all that would happen. Look, the world would continue spinning, America would go on, but it would be a mistake.
Freeberg, we have this idea that there would be a couple of rate cuts and maybe we get monetary velocity going again. People will be able to take more loans out, invest.
Gotta make a phone call. And reception's kind of crappy right now anyway, so probably not seeing anything. So time to mute the stream. Okay, I'm back. That was a quick phone call. Go back to the podcast. Maybe. Text message. That was just a reply for my appointment tomorrow, telling him I'm on the route. I thought I unmuted myself. I was talking to myself and nobody could hear anything. Nothing different. I'm talking to myself a lot while I'm driving because nobody can hear me. Go back to the podcast in a minute. Double check emails. The setup that I got in the van, I can hit every device from the driver's seat, except for the camera. It's hard to hit the camera. I mean, I can touch the camera, but there's no reason to touch the camera unless I want to flip the screen around. Like so. Yo. Cruising on down the road. Alright, enough looking at me. And let's give you the finger. Western Swamp. Okay. Welcome to Stony Creek, Sussex County, Virginia.
invest more in business. But with the stock market tearing it up, there's a lot of wealth being put into the system with the big, beautiful bill. There's a lot of spending in there, as we've talked about here. Putting that aside, it feels like the economy is in really great shape. Chances of a rate cut has now flipped. No change is now the favorite option for September, whereas a week ago, the favorite option was 25 bips. So this idea that we're going to cut, or the Fed's going to cut, that seems to be changing as well. So your thoughts on the macro picture here?
So I'm not sure, like, the firing of Jerome Powell necessarily solves the U.S. fiscal challenge, which is rising interest rates on the long end of the Treasury curve. So if you look at the 30-year Treasury yield over time, and Nick, maybe you could pull this up while I'm talking, but as of today, we're at exactly 5% on the 30-year. And you can see that this 5% yield, which is what the market is demanding the United States government pay in order to be loaned the money
our Social Security, or the military. So pick something you care about. But, our current course and speed, it's in the
perhaps?
Yeah, well, I think a few things. All kinds of energy production, including solar, importantly. So I think it is right that if you just target a few races, you can have a big impact. But I would just say, humbly, I think the American Party is a great idea. I just don't know that it is the highest and best use of Elon's talents at this moment in time with what's happening with AI. And just, to the extent Elon is a friend of the pod, I just think staying focused, AI, Mars, that might be the highest and best use of his particular talents.
100%.
Hasn't that been the case for some time, Gavin? And anytime there's something, whether it's Neuralink, Boring Company, or some other new project, that there's these claims that this is a distraction away from the highest priority work that should be done. I mean, is the political stuff unique? And then his point of view on the political stuff, just like it was with Twitter, is that it's existential to society and civilization and our ability to function and to do to achieve the progress that he aims to achieve in his core function.
So obviously he is succeeding being the CEO of many different companies. But, I think a big part of what makes him kind of exceptional as a CEO is the perfectionism, the drive, and, politics is not a game of perfection, it's a game of compromise. So I am sure if he sets his mind to the America Party that he will succeed, but I think there are other things for him to focus on. And, the Boring Company, Neuralink, these are games of perfection. These are, this is about engineering. This is about solving a problem. It's not, compromise in the art of the possible. So I think he would succeed. I just think that there are other things that may be a higher calling for him.
Yeah, and the cost of being away from his businesses this last time around, as he said very publicly, was severe. It was intense, and he's had to really regroup. But we got this incredible news when Grok 4 came out, and I think we should maybe talk a little bit here about what that big prize is. The big prize, I think, is it's actually going to be an open question, Freeberg. I think the big prize is whoever wins general intelligence, super intelligence, or the biggest cluster, or the most power to power the biggest cluster that powers general super intelligence. So where do we sit on the language models today, Gavin, and Elon's recent, let's just call it what it is, incredibly dominant release of Grok 4. I don't think people expected that. They didn't expect him to be able to leapfrog everybody. And let's be honest, people are leapfrogging each other every 4 to 6 months. So I fully expect Gemini will leapfrog Grok and OpenAI will have their time in the sun again as well. But this was pretty impressive, right?
I'd say this is the biggest leapfrog we've seen in quite some time. And I think the benchmarks that matter are Arc AGI 2 and Humanity's Last Exam, where it did, in the case of Arc AGI 2, it's called semi-private, which is important because it means that some of the questions were held back, because the criticism of these models is they memorize the answer. And so Arc AGI 2, it has not seen the questions before. And it did roughly twice as good as, the state-of-the-art Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic models. And then on Humanity's Last Exam, we can call it 50 to 75%. And I think it's worth mentioning, this model was trained on Hopper. So this model is probably about as far as you can take the last generation of NVIDIA GPUs. The next models we see, Grok 5, O5 from OpenAI, whatever they're going to call the next Gemini, they will be trained on Blackwell, and I think that will be a really big step function. But I do think the ultimate prize here is artificial superintelligence. I think artificial general intelligence will create a lot of economic value, but, maybe we will be able to work less as humans. But I think ASI, artificial superintelligence, is what is really exciting, in terms of maybe, being able to live longer, really.
Goes beyond human intelligence, or this is the smartest human on the planet, and where we are right now in this journey. Because I think these terms are all getting muddled together, and I think we have an interesting conversation here if we part.
I think the bumps in the road, even though I'm not touching the screen, I'm still making the different scenes change. Yeah, I just did it again. Maybe if I click away from that window. I wonder if that was just like an active window or something. I don't know, that was kind of weird. Nobody's watching anyways, but... And of course now I've got YouTube is not receiving enough something, probably data packets or something. Blackwater Swamp. I'm on 295, which is a spur corridor that goes around Richmond to avoid 95, but I did see a sign that there were some lanes blocked, so it's still going to probably suck, but still better than driving through downtown Richmond. This time of day probably wouldn't have been too bad. It's only 10 after 10 Eastern time. Of course, this means I have to drive through DC and most likely south or northbound freaking express lanes are going to probably be closed. They were last time. When did I come up here last? I went this same route 2 weeks ago when I went to Laconia, New Hampshire, but I'm not going all the way that way, so at least I don't have to power through 14 and a half hours. I could have stopped on the other one earlier, but then that would have still left a couple hour drive the next day. It wasn't too bad. Actually, I don't think it was 14 and a half. I think it was like 12 and a half, 13. Because I had left at 8 o'clock in the morning and got to the hotel at 9 o'clock at night, so it wasn't too bad. Maybe 9:30. Right now it still shows me that I'm going to get to my hotel at around 6:30. Probably should pick the hotel. Oh, the phone rang. Called me. Microsoft Surface tablet. I wonder if having that on there is what's causing the screen to do some weird shit on bumps. little bit, just looking up hotels.
I think artificial general intelligence, I would define it as an AI that can take economically useful actions in a variety of domains and be better than the average human in most domains, all domains. But that's very different than super intelligence.
Okay.
Being able to draft a contract, that's not super intelligence, but it is useful. Being able to do a medical diagnosis, not super intelligence, but it is useful. Being able to book my travel, so on and so forth. Super intelligence means exactly what you said, that it is smarter than any human, but it has, access to all of human knowledge. And I think one of the most interesting questions is, what will the economic returns to superintelligence be? And they're definitionally unknowable because we have never seen superintelligence before. If as humans, we have kind of pushed the limits of physics, biology, chemistry, the laws of the universe, then maybe the economic returns to superintelligence won't be that high. But if superintelligence is curing cancer and inventing warp drives, then the returns are going to be really, really high, and it's fundamentally unknowable. Yeah.
Okay, so we're at general intelligence. Hey, your lawyer, your tax, your accountant's going to go much faster. They'll have a co-pilot. This is all going to be great for business. Every business gets 10% more efficient a month. Seems like a reasonable bogey, which means every 7, 8, 9 months, every business is going to get twice as efficient at these kind of chores, yeah?
I think that, I wouldn't say that's a reasonable bogey. I think that might be a little aggressive. It's, the world always, it's, I think it's a Bill Gates quote, the world always changes less than you expect over the next 1, 2, 3 years, but way more than you expect over 10 years.
Yes.
It just takes time for technologies to diffuse. Maybe really nimble startups will see some of the gains, that you were talking about. But if we doubled productivity, that would be like an economic revolution.
We're seeing it in programming.
For sure.
If you talk to the average developer, they, I think, would say they're getting 5 to 10% better a month. Better being defined as faster shipping more code. Rule of 72. Hey, every year at least you're gonna be twice as good. I think that actually seems to be happening with developers.
I think it is happening with software. I think software is the first area where you've seen a real, true kind of economic productivity impact. Generalized, a lot of companies are having incredible success with AI for customers, support, for sales. I think you see it more in startups than big companies, but the impact it has had on is undeniable.
Freeberg, let me swing this around to you. We've got the superintelligence out there. We've got AGI out there. One of the things Gavin said was, by definition, you can't quantify the gains of superintelligence. That is the big prize here. That's why people are putting this much money into these kind of data centers. Yeah, in your mind, it's not just the general intelligence. That would be the silver medal. People are going for the gold here. Not general intelligence, superintelligence. Breakthroughs that we can't imagine. Would you say that's a fair way to sum up the massive interest in investing in these projects?
Yeah, I think there's something where everyone has identified this asymptotic return moment where if you get to that moment, you're limitless in terms of the upside. Is there one winner? I don't know. I don't think so. But I would also kind of reframe this as being some binary condition that I think we're talking about it as being, quote, general intelligence, superintelligence, as being on a spectrum of leverage towards complexity. Complexity meaning, like, I can do a simple task, like instead of writing a letter and putting it in an envelope and having some guy carry it to my mom, and she gets it the next day, I could digitally get her that message instantly over email. That creates an incredible amount of leverage and solves a lot of the complexity of getting her that communication from me. So if I, as a human, said, I would like to harness fusion power, similar to what the sun uses to make energy, and I want to do that on Earth. Today we're in, call it year 40 or 50 of a research cycle of humans trying to solve that particularly complex problem. It's a scientific problem, it's a discovery problem, it's an engineering problem. And this idea of superintelligence is that it could give us immense leverage in solving that complex problem that we otherwise may be challenged to solve over decades or hundreds of years. Or think about one day solving a problem that would take humans thousands of years to solve. I don't think that humans are limited in our ability to solve problems. I think we're limited in terms of time, and what digital intelligence gives us is leverage on time, so that we can now tackle ever more complex tasks that, as you think about these tasks, the amount of time isn't just an incremental 1 year or 2 years, but it becomes 100 years, maybe 1,000 years. So this relates to, I think, projects around physics, around chemistry, around transportation, around biology, where we're probably fundamentally scratching the surface today, and where the superintelligence is an enormous leverage creator for us. And so I don't view it as some like species or race that independently persists in its own intentions, but it is a tool that provides leverage in a way that is orders of magnitude greater than the leverage we got from yesteryear's digital tools, and probably today's AI tools, and probably tomorrow's general intelligence tools, is kind of how I would think about it. And maybe it's because one model does so much stuff better than any human, you can call it superintelligence, but I think functionally leverage into complexity is where this becomes super compelling for humans. And it's why I think we can and should be highly optimistic about living very long lives and traveling anywhere we want, and having abundance in food, and having abundance in resources, and having abundance in recouping our time to do the things we want to do instead of the things that we have to do today, because we don't have access to this incredible leverage. So that's where I get kind of
I love it, Friedberg. I think it's a great way to look at it. But I want to go back to the silver medal here in this sort of competition. Gold being superintelligence, we start solving fusion and really big problems on deep research cycles, and the velocity of that goes up. But just going back to the silver, everybody in the economy becomes, I don't know, single digit, it's more efficient every month, and some amount every year. I've been trying to back of the envelope what I think the value is for a human being in the West, in the modern world, and what they should spend on AI per month. I've come up with a number of about $75, $150, somewhere in that range, is a no-brainer to spend on your AI per month as an individual working in the world. If that's the premise, right, I think there's 1 billion people in the developed world who could spend, let's call it $100 a month, it's $1,200 a year. It doesn't take a genius to figure out this is $1 trillion in revenue. Based on market cap, it's probably $10 trillion in market cap. And then we just have to back into the spending, what it costs to build this. You're doing these kind of calculations, I'm sure, at Atreides, yeah? And where this general back of the envelope that I've come up with in my mind for a mental model, that there's a $10 trillion prize, $1 trillion in revenue, just in the silver medal, does that jive with the spending we're seeing today? I think people are putting in $10 billion worth of equipment a year across 5 different companies, right?
Well, I think they're putting in quite a bit more than 10 billion per year.
Each.
No.
Google alone's doing 70 billion this year. Each is putting 70.
Yeah, but is that 70 billion they're putting in this year going to be repeated for the next 5 years? So it'd be 350 billion?
If you look at
TBD,
TBD, the future's always uncertain.
Yeah.
But if there are economic returns to that, they will keep doing it for sure. Something interesting is, AI is, as we've discussed in previous all-ins, extremely compute intensive. And it's just at no point in my career as a tech investor, except the very beginning, which was kind of the end of the PC wars, which Dell won by being a low-cost producer, going direct, cutting out the working capital, the components in a PC depreciate. So if you have to go through a store where it sits on the shelves, you're at a big disadvantage from, either a, call it a cost or a quality perspective. But at no point in the 25 years I've been a tech investor has being the low-cost producer mattered. Being the low-cost producer is really going to matter in AI, because at some level, the amount of tokens you produce is intelligence because of test time compute, post-training reinforcement learning. And so if you can produce those tokens at a lower cost, you'll have a big advantage. If for that 75 billion or 30 billion or 50 billion you're spending per year in CapEx, you can produce more tokens. That is a profound advantage. I don't like your calculations, just has a back of the envelope, kind of scratch. they seem reasonable to me.
The $1 trillion a year in revenue because of AI seems quite reasonable when you frame it as $1,000 for a person to be whatever 30, 40, 50% more efficient at work every year.
Yeah, and it's just we could probably go back and look at cell phones and what were people willing to pay relative to disposable income.
Your PC analogy would actually be the perfect one. A PC back in that era was what, $3,000, $4,000.
Gotta make a phone call.
person. They lasted for 3
yeah.
years, so it was exactly
Yeah.
1,000 a year.
But this is why creating such delineated distinction between different types of AI, I think is also like the equivalent of trying to create distinctions between other types of technology. So the automobile, the airplane, the telephone, the computer, all of these technologies are tools that created leverage on things that were otherwise complexity and reduced them down to simplicity from a human perspective. Pick up the phone, make a call, instead of getting up on your horse and going across the country to deliver a message, or using a computer to do a spreadsheet that calculated everything for you rather than calculate it by hand, and so on and so forth. Like, all of these tools reduce complexity to simple tasks for humans, and the ever-increasing complexity of what we can accomplish with digital tools is, continuing in this kind of era now. But that's why I think it's very similar, Jason. Like, this is not some new concept. It's the continuation of human productivity. It's the continuation of the improvement of what humans can do and what we can produce, what we can. And yes, there's a concept now that intelligence.
Miles as of right now to go. And I already booked the hotel, and I actually booked it for 2 nights. That way, I don't even have to bother leaving tomorrow. Because by the time I get up there, I'll get up there at like 6:30 tonight to the hotel.
Something that I think makes a lot of sense, particularly since OpenAI bought Johnny Ive's hardware startup, which will place them into competition with Apple at some point, is xAI and Apple are natural partners. There's been a lot of news about Apple thinking about buying Perplexity or Mixtral, but that's just a Band-Aid. Those companies don't get Apple what they need. And Apple's had an incredible partnership for many years now with Google that's generating tens of billions of dollars for both companies. And I think there is solid industrial logic for partnership. You could have Apple Grok, Safe Grok, whatever you want to call it, so that Apple feels comfortable. And that probably also helps Grok in the enterprise. And then it also helps both Apple and Google with this DOJ trial. And so I think in this, incredibly high elo chess match that is being played between the leading labs, that partnership makes a lot of sense for both companies.
It's the first time I've heard anybody sort of make that natural connection, but you're right. Eric Schmidt and Steve Jobs at one point had this discussion, which was, hey, we've got search and you've got a browser now, because the iPhone didn't have a browser, and they could have built their own search engine. They could have partnered with Yahoo, but they decided to make this long-term partnership with Google. And man, that dropped, 20, 30 billion to the bottom line at Apple and cemented Google's search franchise.
Absolutely. And right now that deal is being litigated by the DOJ, and the DOJ is considering remedies. And so if you bring on a really kind of effective, credible AI provider, I think it could help both Google and Apple with their antitrust issues. And at the end of the day, Google, they have Android in their Pixel phones. OpenAI is making hardware. Anthropic is kind of a captive of Amazon. Meta is kind of a, they're in a death match with Apple. So I think there is really sound logic for that partnership. I think it'd be good for both companies. Love to see it happen.
It feels to me like the interface is going to be the browser. I know this sounds crazy, but I've been playing with the Comet browser from Perplexity. Did you play with it yet, Gavin, or look at some of the demos?
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts here? Because it's really, and then ChatGPT just launched a virtual desktop that pops up to go do your, little web-based scrapes, agents, assignments, whatever. I'm going to call it assignments, homework, chores. Go do your chores. What are your thoughts on this modality?
Yeah, the browser is part of distribution winning championships. Apple has Safari, Google has Chrome. And if you're not going to strike a partnership with one of those distribution channels, you will eventually need to do your own browser. And you can extend that logic, all the way. That's why they did a browser, they did a phone. But I also do think the companions from Grok have been interesting to play with, and they certainly make it more engaging.
That becomes the agent. It's a kind of incredible, mind-blowing concept for that to be the interface. All right, listen, here we go. Calling in live. Got a breaking bestie coming on board here. David Sachs calling in live. I see the pale yellow paint and an ancient building, even the cafeteria, I guess.
Play your cards right on stage next week, Jake Allen. You might get invited after the AI summit we're doing.
Yes, absolutely.
We got the AI event in DC next Wednesday, which has been publicly announced, so it's going to be exciting.
David, you brought a friend today. Maybe introduce your friend and tell us what you got done. What have you gotten done in the last week for the American people? They want to know. Because you weren't here last week doing the pod, so you must have gotten something done for the American people. Let's hear it.
Well, first of all, this is the czar behind the czar, Bo Hines.
Okay.
He's the executive director of President's Working Group on Digital Assets. So that's the working group that I chair, but he actually does all the work. He's the executive director, and he's here every day. And he's been working on crypto pretty much nonstop since we started the administration. And he's kind of the unsung hero within our operation here on these two bills that just passed the House, which are historic and quite momentous.
So, Bo, welcome to the program. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about these bills and what they do for the American people.
Yeah, well, first of all, David, you're too kind. we've had a blast working together. I mean, we connected back in transition, I think in late November, and we started mapping out a plan for this, and to see it come to fruition this week is really like, it's unbelievable. The fact that we had the bipartisan votes we did today in the House is remarkable. It's unprecedented, and it shows you that, you know, leaders on both sides of the aisle understand that our country has to be at the forefront of this technological development. But let's start with Genius, because I think Genius is really the foundation for everything else we can build upon in this space. A lot of industry cares about market structure, as do we, and we want to see it done on the president's desk as well. But Genius is unique because it really updates the payment rails inside of our current financial system. I mean, the payment rails have been archaic, and I've likened it to the fact that the ways in which we've communicated have changed quite dramatically over the course of the last several decades. The ways in which we move money really haven't. And we have the technology there in blockchain technology. So what we're doing here is we're fixing the plumbing for our financial system. We're securing US dollar dominance for decades to come. If you want to access our capital markets, you're going to have to use a dollar-backed stable. You're also providing a pathway for, you know, tokenization of public securities and 24/7 markets and the things that people have dreamed about for quite some time. This is a revolutionary piece of legislation, and the fact that it had this much bipartisan support is incredible. It's a testament to President Trump's leadership. It's a testament to our fantastic AI and crypto czar, David's leadership. I mean, he's truly been the guiding star behind the ideology and what we're pushing here. And, you know, he has a phenomenal team as well. I mean, I'd be remiss not to thank Tracy, who's David's chief of staff. I mean, in the midst of all of the chaos to get this done, and like there were so many steps to this, you had to beat the banking lobby to get it past the Senate. Then it moved over to the House, in which we had to basically fight some members that really misinterpreted or misunderstood what this bill actually did. And the president stepped up, David stepped up in an enormous way. It wouldn't have happened without either of them. And so now we have this bill heading to his desk tomorrow. And to pivot to market structure really briefly, this provides like the rules of the road for the exchanges, the brokers, everyone in the space. They desperately need it so that we can break down the wall between traditional financial institutions and these digital asset players. I think that's well underway. Obviously, you know, getting a vote as strong as they did in the House is indicative of what can happen in the Senate. If we deliver on these two pieces of legislation, I mean, that's about 90% of what needs to be done for crypto to make the U.S. crypto a capital of the world. And, you know, it's just remarkable. I mean, we're over the moon.
Okay, Sachs, you got these two things over the finish line. Congratulations on that. Lots of compromises you had to make, so I want to get into what were the compromises to get this done.
Just to clarify one thing when you say finish line. So like Bo was saying, there's two bills. There's the Genius Act, which is the stablecoin legislation. And then there's the Clarity Act, which is market structures, basically all the other tokens besides stablecoins. Where we are is that both passed the House today, but Genius has already passed the Senate. So it is going to the president's desk tomorrow, and it will become law. We're doing a bill signing with the president. By the time this pod is released, it will probably be law. I think we will have the signing. Clarity started in the House, and so it has passed the House, and now it's going to the Senate. And they still have to do their hearings and markup on it. And we expect that'll happen over the next couple of months. In fact, the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, Tim Scott, has said that he wants to finish with the market structure legislation by the end of September. So if all goes well, then we could be looking at a second bill signing in, say, October. And like Bo said, that would be pretty much the crypto industry's wish list for having a clear legal framework in the United States for both stablecoins and other crypto tokens. So it's really pretty amazing. I mean, when I started this job, I'll just tell you, one of my friends in Silicon Valley said that, you know, you may be able to get some AI things done, but you'll never get anything done on crypto. And the reason is because the entrenched interests are too powerful and they'll stop it. The banking lobby will stop it, or Elizabeth Warren will stop it, or just all the status quo players who could get disrupted by blockchain-based technology will somehow find a way to stop it. And that didn't happen. Like, we've actually now moved forward. Genius is about to become law. And I think Clarity is looking like it's going to have the votes in the Senate as well to become law. So it's really pretty amazing how much progress we've made in just 6 months. And like Bo said, this really comes down to President Trump's leadership. He made the promises during the campaign to prioritize crypto, to make the United States the crypto capital of the planet. And it was his negotiating skills and deal making that made this all happen. I mean, this past week has been a little bit of a roller coaster. There were reports over the last couple of days that the whole thing was falling apart. And when it happened, there was a moment, I think this has been publicly reported, but to give you some color on it, is there were 12 members of the House whose votes were necessary to advance the bill to this vote today. And at a certain point, President Trump brought him into his office, the Oval Office, and worked out all the differences personally. And that's what put this bill over the top. If it wasn't for the president's direct involvement and action and understanding of the issues, he listened to all the concerns and he paid attention to the ones that were real and then rebutted the ones that weren't. If it wasn't for his direct involvement, we would not be here today.
And he understands crypto. He's involved in it. He seems to have an understanding of the value of stablecoins for the US dollar. That seems to be a key motivator for this being bipartisan. You got twice as many Democrats as you thought you would get. Is that because people want to make sure that dollar supremacy gets locked in and stablecoins is a way to do that? Because you can't have a stablecoin unless it's backed by a dollar.
Yeah, I mean, like I've talked about on this show before, it shouldn't be that hard to sell regulation to Democrats. I mean, what we're doing here is providing a regulatory framework for the industry. They didn't have one before, and that's why the number one stablecoin player in the world right now is an offshore entity. They will have to come onshore as part of this bill in the next 3 years. So what we're doing here is creating a regulatory framework. But the reason why it's substantially bipartisan is because the industry wants this regulation because they want the stability it gives them in terms of having that legal authorization. They want to make sure that if, 4 years, 8 years from now, 12 years from now, whatever, there's not some new Gary Gensler who comes in and turns the whole industry upside down because he doesn't like some aspect of what they're doing and he just starts prosecuting them, which is what the industry experienced over the past 4 years with Biden's war on crypto. So we, meaning the Trump administration, could fix the Gensler issues just with agency rulemaking, and we're certainly on that path to do that. But if you want long-term stability that goes beyond just this administration, you have to get legislation, you have to canonize it into law. And that's why the industry was so interested in getting these bills passed. So I think that's why you're seeing some bipartisanship here. Like Bo said, I do think that there's a substantial number of Democrats who understand that this technology is the future, and it's a positive thing for the US. What could be bad about allowing digital dollars, which extends the dollar's dominance online, so that it basically bolsters the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency? Over time, as we get challengers from BRICS, for example, this is going to make the US dollar stronger. And every time a dollar token trades somewhere in the world on a crypto wallet, there has to be a physical dollar in a US bank account invested in a US treasury. And that creates demand for our debt, which is another positive thing. And there have been studies done that show that the results of this bill could be trillions of dollars of new demand for our debt, which is only a positive thing.
And if you don't allow a legal way to do this, and you don't have a proper framework, you've been dancing around this person who has 3 years to get their act together. That's Tether, I'll say it. You can do a search for Tether controversies or shenanigans, and you'll find plenty of them.
I don't think it's fair to say they don't have their act together. I think they have their act together. It's just that they did not know how they'd be treated operating onshore in the US under Gary Gensler and the Biden administration. And so they operated offshore. And what was happening under the last administration is that the last administration, by creating all this uncertainty and doubt, was driving all the innovation offshore.
Okay, fine. They have a sordid past. That's my statement, not yours. But now they have to clean up whatever messy stuff they have in their past. That's me saying it, not you. You can have your opinion. I'll take mine. But we're in agreement that if you don't have a framework, they would be doing even more things that were maybe off the reservation in my mind. Gavin, any thoughts here on crypto? I'm not sure you've participated in it particularly because it didn't have a framework, yes?
I would just say, one, David, congratulations. Seems like an incredible achievement. Two, I try to invest in areas where I feel like I at least believe I have some sort of competitive advantage, and it's not clear to me that I have any sort of competitive advantage in crypto. But three, David, I am curious for this.
All right, time to get some gas. Go over to Sheetz. There's actually a Wawa here too. hit the head, grab a protein drink, get back on the road. No, I'm not going to take the microphone in with me. Damn it. Hello, shits or sheets. Yeah. Fun to move. Interesting license plate. Stupid gas pump didn't give me a receipt. So I just take a picture of the gas pump. Alright, let's go park around the corner, use the facilities, stretch, get back on the road. And you can actually watch me stretch when I come out of the bathroom. Back on the road. Any phone calls? Doesn't look like it. Text messages. Take the earpiece out for now. Not going to drink the protein drink yet, but shortly. Guess I'll go back to the podcast.
Stable coins, does the Genius Act limit them to dollar-backed stable coins? So it's not like you can create the stable coin and then swap in something other than a dollar. Is that true?
Well, I mean, anybody can create a stablecoin that's backed by anything. And in fact, I think there are like euro-backed stablecoins out there, for example, but nobody uses them. I think if you look at the stablecoin market share, it's like 98% US dollars, 2% euros, because there's a flight to quality. I mean, everyone wants to use the best one, right? And this is why it's in the interest of the United States to basically enable this technology to continue flourishing, is because as the best fiat currency, we're the one that's going to get used the most. There's no reason to have multiple fiat stablecoins, not really. So this is going to accrue to the benefit of the United States. Jake, let me go back to something you said. So I don't necessarily agree with your criticisms of that particular company, but where I will agree is that this bill will provide additional comfort for consumers and additional protection for consumers, because now all the stablecoin companies will have to operate in the United States. They'll be subjected to quarterly audits, and we will know that every stablecoin that's been issued is fully reserved or backed up by a dollar in a US bank account. And so therefore, when a stablecoin holder eventually wants to cash out and they go to basically an off-ramp, the money will actually be there. Now, I'm not saying that the money isn't there with any of the current providers. In fact, I think it is, but now consumers will have the additional protection and confidence to know.
Other Fugazi stuff offshore, not saying anybody's doing that, but people have, then you just don't get to participate. And this is the great thing about having some basic rules of the road. We should talk a little bit here about infrastructure, Sachs. You were in Pittsburgh this week. There were some announcements. This was another bipartisan win. I think Shapiro was there, a bunch of investment going on there. Maybe tell us a little bit about the progress made in Pittsburgh with regards to AI and infrastructure.
This was an energy and innovation summit that was organized by the Pennsylvania Senator Dave McCormick and his wife, Dina Powell McCormick. And they did an amazing job bringing together all of these different companies and interests that have a stake in energy in Pennsylvania and the development of AI. And Pennsylvania is, I think it's the #2 energy producing state in the US. It has tremendous amounts of natural gas. They feel like they can expand that. I think there's been a lot of fracking in the past there. For example, they even have nuclear Westinghouse is there. And it makes sense to have the data centers near the power source, right? And so we know that these big AI data centers can be powered by either natural gas or nuclear. And so Pennsylvania just makes a lot of sense as a place to build this AI infrastructure. So this was a summit to announce new investment in Pennsylvania, something like $90 billion. President Trump was there to keynote the summit and talk about these investments. It's his policies towards energy that he started describing long ago. I mean, remember, he made the campaign promise of drill, baby, drill. He's been talking about the need for energy expansion in America for many years. And I think he was very far-sighted in seeing that energy is the basis for everything. It's the basis for AI. It's the basis for all other kinds of growth. So by promoting energy dominance, we also get AI dominance. And we've talked on this show before about how we're going to need that energy to power the electricity of all these new AI data centers. So this summit brought together all these different groups. And the thing I thought was really interesting, the thing I learned from it, was just how diverse the business interests are that are going to participate in this whole AI boom. It wasn't just big tech. Yes, Ruth Porat from Google was there. It's also small tech. There was hardware companies, there were robotics companies, but there were also these energy companies. There was nuclear, there was gas. The trade associations were there. It's construction, it's electricians, it's carpenters. And so there's a huge diverse array of different parts of the economy that are going to experience growth from this AI boom that's taking place. It's not just a Silicon Valley thing. So that was what I took away from Pittsburgh, and it was a really cool experience being
I
there.
thought there were two interesting notes as well. Hydro, I saw Google was investing in hydro and upgrading some dams there. This is, I think, Gavin, one of the great upshots of the AI boom is that the AI companies, whether it's Meta or Google, they're so motivated that they'll actually go and upgrade the infrastructure. They'll invest in the small modular nuclear reactors that are coming, and even gas turbines. Obviously, natural gas is a major part of this as well. And you saw that up close and personal with the build out of Colossus. Yeah, Gavin?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, electrical production is fundamental to AI. If we do not significantly increase kind of domestic energy production and electricity generation, we are already at a disadvantage to China. And I do think we want to close that kind of electrical generation gap as quickly as we can. And natural gas is great, nuclear is great, solar's great, batteries are great. We need it all.
Yeah.
All of it.
And Sachs, I saw your favorite governor, Josh Shapiro, was there, and he was being very positive about finding common ground on energy, economic development, and saying, hey, this is like a great example of bipartisan efforts to collaborate. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because you had two great moments of collaboration between the Trump administration and the Democrats. This is good for the American people, yeah? Both on the crypto project and on AI in Pennsylvania.
I've never met Shapiro. I did see him there at the event, but I didn't see him on the stage. I don't know if he was part of the roundtable, so I don't know exactly what his status was. But what's interesting about Pennsylvania right now is that it's a state that's turning red. And so you see that Fetterman, who's probably the most right-wing member of the Democrat Party in the Senate, and Josh Shapiro obviously is tacking towards the center because they see the direction of travel in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I think you've got some centrist Democrats in that state.
Yeah, working out pretty well.
Josh Shapiro every 2 days tweets something about how he's deregulated something, he's made it easier to do business. Like he's on the program. Seems like a sensible man.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll just give a final shout out to Bo here for all the work that he did on Genius. I mean, he's kind of the unsung hero.
And Bo, how are you doing all this while finishing up your degree? When do you graduate from college? This kid looks like he's 20 years old. How old are you, Bo?
I have the baby face. I'm 29, turning 30 next month.
Look at you, 29 in the White House, lead and working with David Sachs. This is a dream come true for you, huh?
It is. I mean, David's been incredible. I've learned so much from him. Just the way that he negotiates and the way that his brain works. It's been a blast just to be a part of it. But I have a 10-month-old now, so I should have bags under my eyes from lack of sleep. But Jason, I'll make one more point before I jump off on the Tether topic. Like, the one thing that I think your viewers should know is this year they'll be the 4th largest purchaser of U.S. Treasuries. And I think that's something that, we should really contemplate. I agree with David's sentiment on this. I'm excited to see what they do here in the U.S. I'm glad they're going to be a part of our system under the regulatory regime, but so will everyone else. And I think that's a great thing for our country. It allows us to have control.
That's great that you guys are backing them up because they've been banned so many times by other governments. I'm glad you got their act together. I'm gonna keep on those Tether guys until they get their act together. So
keep qualifying that you speak only for yourself.
I only speak for myself. I've been following that Tether story for a long time, and I think it's great.
I want to make this point. I always know that our critics have never actually watched the pod when they start talking about the all-in point of view on something, right? As if there's a singular point of view from the all-in pod. Like, it's like the all-in bros, whoever think something. When anyone who's watched the show knows that we've been fighting like cats and dogs for years, and there's 4 distinct points of view, and sometimes we agree, but there's almost always some disagreement. So
we've disagreed about this issue. We also, Trump and I, as you know, are relentless supporters of Ukraine. We believe we should be giving them weapons and support. And David, you happen to disagree with me and our president on that. You've had a different position historically. So here we are.
I'm going to stay in my lane on that one.
David, can we talk about the H20s, or would you rather not?
Sure.
Because I feel like you have been
Let's go.
So dead right about this. And I am, it seems like the export, they're going to get the licenses, and that is 100% the right decision for America. And I do give you credit for championing that. I'm happy to talk about why I think it's great, but would just,
can you frame it for a second for the audience, Gavin? What we're talking about here, NVIDIA obviously was banned from selling their latest and greatest to China, and even the last generation, the H20s. And obviously that creates an opening for Huawei and other players to create competitor products as opposed to using the standards built here in America. Yeah.
Well, I think you said it well, but first of all, it's not the latest and greatest. It's the greatest. We're not gonna, I don't think we're gonna let the latest.
It's not even the last gen. It's a deprecated version of the last generation.
Right.
Yeah.
So remnants.
It's a less powerful version of the Hopper chip, and now they're on to Blackwell. So anyway, the Gavin can explain.
Yeah, it is. It's many, many years behind. But while it's many years behind the kind of state of the art here in America, it is, I think, kind of devilishly clever because it's, call it, 2 years ahead of kind of the chips from Huawei. And so it kind of gives America an advantage while preventing China from developing kind of a domestic NVIDIA alternative. And the real threat is because China, they do have more electricity. They can do things that we cannot do here in America. Blackwell racks are exquisitely designed to be as power efficient as possible. If you don't care about power, you can make very different kind of design decisions. Huawei has something called the Cloud Matrix 384, which uses fiber optics instead of copper to link the chips together. And while it's not nearly as power efficient as the Blackwell NVL72, they have all the power they need. And so I think it's a smart decision for America to sell this chip that gives America an advantage in AI and keeps China from developing kind of their own domestic alternatives, which could eventually kind of challenge, NVIDIA, AMD, other kind of American AI accelerator champions globally. We don't want that to happen. So I thought it was a mistake when they banned the chips, and I'm really happy and think it's really good for America if that is being reversed. And kudos to you, David.
Gavin, you said it so well, I don't think I have anything to add.
Can I just say one thing on crypto? You guys can put it in or not, but I thought it was interesting, David. I was always worried about stablecoins as a risk to the dollar, but I think you make a very good point that when you are the dominant currency, they entrench the dominance. And I just had not thought of them that way.
I think what's going to happen with these dollar-based stablecoins is they'll start being used all over the world. Let's say that you're in a country, maybe it's a developing world country, where the fiat currency is not trusted. And now all of a sudden you can transact in dollars using a wallet on a phone, and the merchant also has a wallet on a phone, and now you can just transact in dollars. You could see a large portion of these economies dollarizing from the bottom up. Because again, once you have your choice of fiat currencies through stablecoin, why wouldn't you just use the best one? And that's what I think is really interesting. So I do think it extends the dollar's dominance internationally into the online
100%.
realm.
Yeah. And previously, people were basing their stablecoins on a basket of assets, some treasuries, some real estate investments, because they were seeking yield, Gavin. So they would buy real estate or, short-term, long-term treasuries. They might put equities into it. They might keep some in cash. And none of that was known. And so that's where this big fear came. Hey, these things are getting pretty big. There's obviously a demand to use this concept of a stablecoin. But what if there's a run on the stablecoins? And that was always the big fear with various players, was what if everybody wants to withdraw their stablecoins? Are there enough dollars or liquid assets in there? And that's where I think certain players have maybe, moved the asset allocation. And in order to be in the US market, Tether's going to have to be 100% in treasuries, right? They're not going to be allowed to be, say, in real estate. There was a concept that maybe they were buying Chinese paper for real estate back in the day, and people were concerned about that. So this cleans all that up, and they have an easy path. But you can't make interest on it. That's actually a very interesting portion of this. So that will have to come at a later time, so the banks don't lose anything here, right?
Well, just to clarify one point on that, one of the concessions that was made to community banks is not to have an interest feature because the community banks were worried that this new stablecoin industry would put them out of business. I think that fear was wildly overblown on their part. I don't think that's what's going to happen remotely. But when you have a new technology like this and a very established industry, you can see why maybe they'd be afraid. But the bill allows for all sorts of marketing, promotions, rebates, that kind of stuff. So maybe it's not called interest, but there are mechanisms to create, let's say, rewards for stablecoin holders. So it's not as like black and white as just, there's like nothing a stablecoin issuer can do to attract or incentivize or reward one of their holders. It is a dimension they could compete on.
So maybe if I were to buy $10,000 worth of a stablecoin, I could get mileage-like points, or maybe a load-in gift card or something
maybe, I don't
like
know.
that.
Yeah, we have to interpret the language, but the mechanism is there.
Okay, well, there you have it, folks. All right, reporting from our capital, David Sachs, our czar of AI and cryptocurrency. I'll see you next Wednesday in DC for a very important summit.
All right, besties, I'm here at the White House with Senator Bill Hagerty from Tennessee, the principal author of the Genius Act. He, I would say, along with the leadership of President Trump, are the reason why this bill happened. We have stablecoin legislation just signed into law by President Trump. Bill, you did a phenomenal job. I got to observe this whole process, and you really played the critical role. You were a very skillful legislator, crafting delicate compromises. You were kind of the glue that held the whole thing together. Congratulations on getting this done. Is this your first bill that you've gotten done as a senator?
It is. I've served in the Senate for over 4 years, but we were in the minority for the past 4 years. So this is the first opportunity since the Senate was taken by the Republicans to actually drive legislation through. And the fact that we have the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the White House made this possible. It was just a threshold concern. We worked so hard, as you know, to retake the Senate in 2024, to retake the White House in 2024, and hold on to the House of Representatives. It worked. And that's the only thing that's enabled us to deliver this type of meaningful legislation. And I say this too, it's been a great team that has done this. I may be the author of the legislation, but the leadership that you've brought to bear from the White House, coming in and donating your time from the private sector, working as a volunteer here, but making certain that the leadership and the vision is present here at the executive branch. You've been absolutely great. And that vision, I think, is carried forward into the Senate, the House. More and more people are understanding this and catching on. And I think what we've done today is launch the catalyst for what's going to make America the crypto capital of the world.
Yeah, it's been really amazing and interesting for me to watch this whole process. They say that you shouldn't watch legislation or sausages being made. But earlier in the week, the media was reporting that this bill was dead because there were a dozen holdouts, and President Trump made calls late into the night. He gathered people at the Oval Office. He cajoled, he twisted arms, and he also persuaded. And he got us over the finish line. Yes. It was pretty incredible.
Well, I think the founding fathers made it actually quite difficult to legislate for a reason. But it is difficult. It's taken months upon months to get to this point. And legislation, the Genius Act has been killed a couple of times in the media. Elizabeth Warren declared victory early on that she killed the bill. That didn't happen. She didn't have the juice to do it. But there have been many attempts.
That's a big deal, because until now, the crypto community's been living under Elizabeth Warren's reign of terror.
That's exactly
she
right.
basically was calling the shots during the Biden administration on crypto. And I was there when the Genius Act passed the Senate. I was up in the bleachers or whatever, and she was not happy. I mean, there were photos of her, and she did not like losing.
There's a fundamental reason for this, David.
As I expected, express lane going north is closed. So when I looked earlier, it didn't look like it was going to be too bad, but there is going to be a slowdown up there somewhere.
Because Elizabeth Warren and her crowd want to see a central bank digital currency. What they want is control of our transactions. They want the ability, they're the ones that wanted to get to a $600 threshold for your Venmo transactions, reporting everything. They want the ability to do choke point 3.0.
Right.
And if you think about it, they had visibility in our transactions, the ability to centralize and control them. They could control our lives. It may be okay for the Chinese Communist Party, but that's not going to work here in America. And this legislation put the final nail in the coffin to that.
It's really amazing that you got it through. And to get this passed, the Senate, you had to have 60 votes, right?
Correct.
Because reconciliation, you only need 50 plus one, but for regular order, I guess, to get past the potential for a filibuster, you need 60.
That's exactly right.
So what demands did that put on you in terms of getting Democrat votes? Because the Republicans have, what, 53?
Yes.
So we
didn't have all the Republicans. We lost to Republicans, but what enabled me to get the other 9 Democrats to come on board was really an education process. Because at its core, this shouldn't be a partisan issue. This is about taking America's payment system into the 21st century. This is about making our nation more competitive. This is about expanding demand for the U.S. Treasury securities that we issue. This is about the dominance of the U.S. dollar. It's hard not to like it, but I think there's a partisan bent here in Washington that's so strong that their objective is just to keep Republicans or Donald Trump or David Sachs from getting a win here. And through education and through listening, and frankly, I don't think it's my legislative skills. I think it's the business skills that I brought to the legislative branch. I think it's through the business skills and the ability to negotiate that we've actually gotten to this point today.
And so tell us about that. So before this, you were a businessman, then you became ambassador to Japan. Mm-hmm. You met President Trump. You told me you wanted to run for senator. He told the story up in his speech. He said that you had learned Japanese in like 6 months as ambassador to Japan.
It was a little longer than that.
Okay.
There's a piece of the story missing because I started my career at a place called the Boston Consulting Group. And they sent me to Tokyo for 3 years back in the late 80s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. That's when I learned the language. And to go back as U.S. ambassador to Japan under President Trump in 2017, the honor of a lifetime. I can tell you, representing the greatest nation was an honor. But particularly in a region like that has so much strategic so many strategic initiatives that are underway right now. You think about this. Japan has more U.S. military stationed there than any place else in the world. Japan is one of the toughest environments in the world. If you think about the neighborhood that they're in, North Korea, Russia, China right at your doorstep. The time that I spent as ambassador really helped me dig in deeply in terms of the national security issues that our nation